Surviving the Survivor, we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
Hello and welcome to STS, everyone. I'm Ileana and I'm filling in today. I'm also known as the COA here at STS. And we want to welcome everyone and say thank you to those who are here early. We are about to get started, but first I do want to introduce our best guest. Many of you already know her. She is law professor Jo Patuto. Jo, can you hear me all right?
I can, thank you.
All right, thank you so much for being here. And for those that are new, we do want to remind you guys to please hit the like button and subscribe if it's your first time joining us. I am, again, just a fill-in host. Our regular host, Joel Waldman, is busy doing a taping today with his mother for a special at PBS. So we'll keep you guys updated with that. But again, we do want to thank Jo for being here with us. If you guys are not aware, Jo is a law professor, but more importantly, she's also one of our favorite legal analysts here. She comes on and she did watch the Sarah Boone trial with us. So she's very familiar with this case and can fill us in and break down any of those questions that we may have today as we watch the Sarah Boone sentencing. Jo, what are you expecting as we go into this?
Well, typically at a sentencing hearing, the defendant is able to give a statement. Usually what the defendant does is express remorse and indicate that she's learned from the experience. And then typically the family members of the victim are entitled to address the court and talk about the impact on their lives of the death. And then Sarah Boone is also entitled to bring in family members or friends to speak on her behalf. So those are usually the components. The prosecutor may well give an argument as to the sentence that he thinks is appropriate. The defense counsel will do the same thing. With Sarah Boone, everything is kind of up in the air as to what typically should happen. There are things that defendants are instructed for good reason not to do at a sentencing hearing. One is to retry the facts or to claim again, I didn't do it, I'm innocent. That's a really bad choice to make. They are also instructed to show remorse. And I will have to see whether Sarah Boone does that, whether she apologizes to George's family. So we won't know. Usually the defendant is advised by her lawyers not to make the statement too long. So we'll be able to tell, I think, a little of whether she's going to follow her lawyer's advice, depending on how long she decides to talk. She may see this as another, performance opportunity for her and not one where she's going to do her best to convince the judge that the sentence should be lower. On the other hand, I thought at trial she'd never be able to control herself on the stand, and she did a pretty good job at trial of staying constrained. So maybe she will follow her lawyer's advice. And I see you have somebody in the chat saying she hopes that we hear from George's kids. He has 3 children. The youngest, I believe, was around 15 at the time of the murder. So they're all young adults now, and at least a couple of them have been interviewed in the past about the impact on their lives of their father's death. Interesting, the ex-wife also has been interviewed about her relationship with George. I think he calls himself George. Do you know, it seems to me that I read that somewhere that he didn't use the Spanish pronunciation. And she indicated that their relationship was, up and down, but he never inflicted violence on her, and he was a really good father. So it might be interesting to see whether even she provides a statement.
And La Mesa, shout out to La Mesa, she's a friend of the show. She's asking if we're going to hear from George's kids. And as you just said, Jo, he does have 3 kids, but I don't think we're going to be hearing from them today.
Okay.
We believe, and thank you, Julie, that only his mother and his brother are going to speak. His brother did take the stand. He was a witness during the trial. And then his mother had that really emotional moment.
Right.
In fact, that the attorney called out saying, hey, this is inappropriate, but I can't even imagine what she was feeling. For those of you that didn't watch the trial or don't remember that moment, she was sitting in the gallery watching as they were playing that really hard to watch video of George inside the suitcase. She was watching and listening as he was really taking his last breaths and saying some of his last sentences. And she was also watching a lot of different videos that they were playing of the relationship that George and Sarah Boone had. And obviously that was, I'm sure, a lot for her to take in. And she actually like keeled over and was sobbing and then had to run out of the courtroom mid testimony as they were playing all of that evidence. So that was obviously a tough moment to watch, just as we were watching from home. I can't imagine what it was like being there and obviously absorbing all of that information.
And I might add that what happened in court is one of the things that Sarah Boone's lawyer is listing as an appealable issue, claiming that it had a negative impact on the jury such that she was denied a fair trial. I guess I'm a little surprised that none of the children are going to be presenting witness statements. I know one of them lives in Philadelphia, but do we know whether, Julie seemed to know, do we know whether the mother or the brother will be reading a statement from one of the children, even though the children aren't present? I saw them interviewed once, and I thought they were pretty powerful witnesses, would be pretty powerful witnesses for their loss and how much he meant to them.
I believe they have done interviews. I know they actually did an interview, and Julie Grant from Court TV re-aired it this morning. So I know that they have gone on the record. I'm unsure whether or not they're going to be reading any statements from them today. I do want to pull this up quickly just to give everyone a heads up. This is from Trial TV Live. They're another YouTube channel, and they are graciously allowing us to take their feed. They're there in Orlando, and they have their own camera with their own hookup. So shout out to Trial TV Live. He's giving us an update right now saying, FYI, Judge Kranick is still at lunch, so no feed until he gets back. We're hearing it could be another 20 or 25 minutes.
Wow.
So that's why we don't have it pulled up for you guys right now. As soon as they get back, hopefully we'll have a heads up. But in the meantime, Joe, if it's all right, we'll just have you answer a couple of questions here as they pull them all up. Okay, here we go. I saw someone asking, where was it? I saw someone asking about whether or not a judge has made up their mind before they walk into the sentencing. Talk to us about what that process is like.
Well, theoretically, they're supposed to still have an open mind when they go into sentencing. But of course, the judge probably has a fairly good idea. The judge will know what the sentencing range is. The judge sat through the trial. The judge has read the pre-sentence report that has been prepared. The judge has a pretty good feel for what he or she thinks the appropriate sentence should be. But open mind means listening to the impact statements can have an impact. Maybe just on the margin, maybe only occasionally, but it can have an impact. Although I think at the time the judge comes in, he probably has a fairly good idea where he wants to go. As I said, he cited on the trial. I would expect, I don't know that he will say this, but the fact that the jury came in with a verdict after about 90 minutes will have an impact in terms of how solid the prosecution case was, particularly if Sarah Boone decides to relitigate, the evidence and whether she should have been convicted in the first place. And I assume that her statement, depending on what she says, could have an impact on the judge if he's wavering between two different possible sentences.
And Joe, this question is coming from Nicole. I want to give Nicole a quick shout out first. Nicole has been posting a lot on Twitter about the Ellen Greenberg case. Nicole, I'm not really on Twitter often, but I do see your tweets all the time, and Joel's always talking about it. So a big thank you to you. But her question today is, can family members deliver impact statements via Zoom?
Yes.
I know in the Dan Markel case that
Right.
often they did that as well, but I believe today they're going to be doing it in person.
Right. And as I said, they can also do it by a written statement that either the prosecutor or another family member reads into the record.
And this one is also from La Mesa here. Joe, do you foresee Boone trying to pull stunts? To me, this is a person whom the rules and even laws have never applied to. I hope the judge is strict with her and doesn't allow nonsense. And as you know, Joe, we have seen a lot of nonsense from her.
Yeah. I don't know. As I said, when she testified, I really believed that she would not be able to hold to a script and control herself from going off and saying things that her lawyers and everybody else watching would have thought would be harmful to her defense. And she did a really good job of staying on message. So what we know is she's able to do it. The question today is whether she will decide to do it or whether she's going to decide just to use this as a performance opportunity. And I don't know. I guess I wouldn't put money either way on it as to what she's going to do.
Okay, I'm just going to put this up here. The feed is up now. It may still be a couple of minutes until things get started, but I do want to keep this up. That way, whenever we see some action, we can listen in. This is from Sam M. How much time does Joe think Sarah will get?
Well, the judge told her at the hearing at which she rejected the plea deal would have been 15 years. The judge told her then, do you realize that if you don't take this plea, I have to impose at least 22 and a half years. I won't have any discretion not to. So given what the judge told her, 22 and a half will be the low end, and I don't think he'll go with the low end. I think he will go at 25, 30, maybe a little higher, but I don't think it will be 22 and a half. I hate to make predictions. Casey Stengel once said, never make predictions because you can be wrong. And that's clearly true, but I'm out on a limb now. More than 22 and a half, probably around 30.
And Joe, this is from Anja. Professor Joe, what avenues of appeal do you think the defense has?
Well, I mentioned one that they're going to mention is George's mother during the trial when they were showing the suitcase and what actually happened, making, being emotionally upset. So they've got one that they're going to make saying that had an impact on the jury, enough to make the trial unfair. So I assume that they will raise that one. The one that I think they will definitely raise is the issue with the state's expert, where the defense at trial said, you're surprising us. You never said this before. We asked you when we interviewed you, do you have any other opinions you're going to render? And now you're springing one on us. So that whole issue, I'm sure they will raise on appeal. And then I would suspect that another one she will raise is being forced, in her mind, forced to go pro se. In other words, going without a lawyer, then finding a lawyer, but her new lawyers not being given, any additional time to prepare for the trial. And it seems to me that will be the other one that I believe that they will raise, that the new lawyers did not have enough time adequately to prepare, and they should not have been, nor should she, penalized by the fact that there were lawyers before on the case, and that the case had lasted 4 years, 5 years before it got to trial. So those are the three that I expect that they will focus on.
Really quickly, a special thanks to Annalie Finch for this super chat here. Thank you for covering Sarah Boone's sentencing. Thank you, Annalie Finch. And I think I saw Annalie Finch in a chat this morning on Lawyer You Know's channel. If you missed it, Lawyer You Know interviewed Joel, and the video premiered this morning. So it is on his channel. Definitely check it out and leave a comment. And a big shout out to Lawyer You Know, who, as you guys know, we are big fans of. He's a great guy. Also, a big thanks to Sassy Patty for her super sticker. And this is from Joanne. How can someone show remorse if they have an appeal pending. And another question I want to tack on to that is, are there any limitations as to how many appeals she can actually file?
She should only be able to file one appeal from the trial court to the appellate court. Then if she loses at the appellate level, she can ask the state Supreme Court to review the case. If she loses there also, she has a theoretical avenue to the United States Supreme Court if she can claim a constitutional issue, such as she was denied a fair trial, which would be a Sixth Amendment right. The review by the state Supreme Court would be discretionary in the court as to whether they took it, and clearly at the U.S. Supreme Court level, it would be discretionary. Then defendants always have another avenue. After all the appeals have run and there's no more appeal available, you can start what's called post-conviction relief, which means you start back at a trial level court and you attack the trial or the sentencing that occurred. You can do that in state court, and then you also have the opportunity to do it in federal court. So that's the run of opportunities she would have to challenge the conviction. And that, I would just add as an aside, is independent of any claim that there's new evidence that available that wasn't reasonably available at the time that would have affected the conviction or the decision. And you can see the Menendez brothers 30 years later, or however many years, are basing theirs on new evidence, at least in part new evidence. So that's one part. What was the other part of the question? I talked so long, I forgot the first part of the question.
No, I think you actually answered it already. I had asked about the limitations of the appeals, but you covered that, Joe. So
okay,
we appreciate it. Big thanks to Cat3309 for gifting 5 memberships. And now from Julia H, what sentencing range is she looking at?
Well, 22 and a half is the minimum, and I think it's 22 and a half to life for second-degree murder in Florida. I saw somebody on the chat said the maximum was 30. I thought it was life, but if someone knows Florida law more intimately than I do, I would defer to that.
Here we go. We have Beachside Boomer here saying she's looking at 23 and a half years to life in an answer to your question.
Okay. And I think the judge said 22.5, so, but it's somewhere there and to life, yeah.
And Joe, what about the process of sentencing? So I know that defendants don't have to give a statement, but how often do you think defendants do give a statement at their sentencing? And obviously we assume that Sarah Boone will, because as we have seen in the past, she does enjoy the spotlight.
Right, she doesn't lose an opportunity. In almost all cases, the defendant will give a statement. It might be very, very, very short. It might simply be, I'm sorry for the family, and period. But they all typically give a statement. Ileana, I remember the other part of that question now. It was, does it affect the defendant's appeal if she says she's remorseful at the sentencing hearing? And the answer to that is a defendant has to be careful at the sentencing hearing not to admit something on the record that would implicate the appeal. But to say you're remorseful, I mean, she doesn't deny having done the killing. So she can certainly express remorse that the thing happened. She can express remorse that George is dead. She can express remorse for the impact and the suffering of the family without also saying, and I intended to kill him and I did. So there's certainly ways to express remorse without affecting the appeal. And I'm sure her lawyers have talked to her about this. Well, she seems to be in court.
All right. Yep. There she is. I think we should
have her papers. I see a lot of papers there. And if that's what she's going to say, then she's going to talk longer than most defendants do, and also talk longer than lawyer advice would typically be as to what to do.
And Anna Shaw here asking, does the judge take into consideration for sentencing that she had 9 lawyers?
Well, he shouldn't take into consideration directly that she had 9 and therefore she was a problem and therefore she should get a heavier sentence. Some of those 9, by the way, were not attributable to her. One, for example, she had a public defender and then she decided to hire a lawyer. So that was just it wasn't her behavior that led to it. But the judge certainly can consider it to the extent that Sarah's claim is you didn't give my 9th lawyer enough time. Then the fact that she had all those other lawyers and there were so many delays attributable to her can weigh into the judge's consideration as to whether the last lawyer needed more time. Looks like it's a full courtroom.
All right, we don't have audio yet.
And we don't have the judge yet, so.
We don't have the judge yet. Yep.
It's a surprise that he's not ready to go. As I recall, he was pretty prompt. Maybe not as prompt as Charlie Adelson's judge was, Judge Everett, in that trial. But it seemed to me that the judge here was pretty prompt most of the time. I wonder if he had a hearing this morning that went long or documents arrived late. Because saying he was at lunch, maybe he was, but I would opt for a different form of different real explanation.
And Nan, our friend of the show, is saying George's family is there. And yeah, when they did pan the camera over and you saw the gallery there, you were able to see family members there. And as you guys may or may not remember, Joel was there for the entire trial in Orlando, sitting there. And oftentimes the gallery wasn't full, but obviously today it looks like a lot of people turned up. I'm sure there to support the family members. It's going to be a difficult day for George's mother, who
yes. Did anybody?
Be
I don't know her family, and as I recall from the trial, she doesn't have close relations with anyone except the ex-husband. But normally at these hearings, somebody speaks up, for the defendant, and I didn't see, of course, I don't know everybody, but it didn't seem to me that I saw anybody there that I recognized that might speak up for Sarah Boone.
And Massive Mom here is asking if Joel is at the sentencing. Joel is not there. Joel and Quam are actually here in Miami today. They're meeting up. They're doing a special shooting for a video for PBS. So that's why Joel is out of pocket today. He will be live tonight, I believe at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So he should be back in the next couple of hours, but he is not at the sentencing today.
That's a lot of papers. Doesn't it look like it's about 3/4 of an inch thick?
It's a lot of papers. And as you know, Joe, she was very busy the entire trial and really for all of her motion hearings as well, constantly taking notes. No one really knows what she was writing or drawing or taking notes about. But she had dozens and dozens of pages nearly every day.
Yeah. Although if I were her lawyer, I would have advised her to take lots of notes because I don't think her demeanor would have been very good for her with the jury. And so if you could get her to look down at a piece of paper and write, even if she was only doodling, that would have assuaged any impact on the jury.
And Shannon Bell here is asking, is she entitled to public defenders for the appeals process?
For the first appeal as of right, I believe she would if she's indigent. And she didn't pay for this lawyer, so assuming she's indigent, yes.
And Joe, this is from Kathy. She's asking if you know what happens to the cell phone that Sarah wanted back.
It was part of the evidence, wasn't it? So it stays with the evidence because on an appeal, you can't start, returning evidence to people until you're sure the trial is finished and over. And at that point, I still don't think she'll get the cell phone back. She'll be in prison then.
And it's interesting. They're looking over right now at his phone, scrolling up and down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it looks like they're looking at paperwork. Julie says that he might be showing her the new filing. Right.
Well, he's already said he won't handle the appeal, which is not really unusual. Trial lawyers are often don't do appeals. On occasion they do, but often there are other lawyers who handle appeals for a client. He's already said he won't be doing the appeal.
And a lot of people saying that they really did respect and like watching this judge in action. Jennifer Cornman saying this poor judge went through heck with her. It was definitely an interesting trial, but it was a learning experience, I say, for a lot of trial watchers to see how this happened from beginning to end.
Yeah, and I agree. He was pretty calm. It wouldn't have helped the case if he showed that he had lost his temper with her or anything that might then be claimed later to have been bias on the part of the judge. So it was certainly the right thing to do from a legal standpoint, but he did it very well. He was very, very calm with her. I mean, I remember some of those hearings where she'd come in with those 14 and 16-page letters and then claim that she wasn't getting, evidence that she should have gotten. And he was always very calm. So person in the chat is absolutely correct.
Yeah, and what's interesting here is, again, the juxtaposition between everyone who was there to watch the sentencing. Obviously, their demeanor is very different than the demeanor that Sarah Boone has been portraying, not only today, but throughout the entire trial. As her life is on the line, her freedom, she seems to continue to just be smiling and looks fairly happy half the time.
Well, I think she's good at denying what what is right in front of everybody else. But it's also true, and Ileana, you mentioned it. I mean, this is a performance opportunity for her, and she revels in it. I mean, the rest of us might not be reveling in the fact that we're about to be sentenced for a long term in prison. But she seems to prioritize the fact that she's on camera in front of an audience.
And for those who are just joining us, you have not missed anything yet. We're just waiting for the judge to arrive. That is Sarah Boone that we're looking at right now with her attorney. We are just waiting for things to get started here, but Sarah Boone is awaiting her sentencing today. And Joe, how long do you think we can expect the sentencing to last today?
It depends on how long she talks. If there are only two family members on one side, it depends on how long they talk. And my guess would be, from hearing the brother on the stand, maybe those impact statements won't be very lengthy. They're going to have to review or at least talk about the pre-sentence report, and then both lawyers will have a chance to weigh in on what the sentence should be. So those are the components to it, and they depend on how long each actor, when the actor gets up, actually speaks. I mean, often sentencing hearings are done in a half hour or an hour. I wouldn't guess that this one is going to be that short.
And Joe, I will say it's pretty disturbing to watch how much she's smiling. I mean, right now, as you were speaking, she turned around twice. And still, I mean, she has this huge grin on her face. And we're talking about being present for her own sentencing as the family members of her ex-boyfriend or her boyfriend, who is now dead, is there. And then this is probably one of the worst days of their lives. And here she is, smiling, looking back, laughing, looking giddy almost.
No empathy. Well, we should watch as to whether she continues to smile once the judge is there to observe her, or whether her behavior shifts to something more sober, more in line with the experience than it is right now. And that may give us a clue as to how controlled she'll be when she makes her statement. She can control her behavior. But yeah, she doesn't seem to have any empathy for the feelings of the family. Even if you feel you were justified, you still killed their son and brother. you know, it's really cold.
Yeah, it is. And that's the thing. I mean, all of this is also still so fresh. The trial was not so long ago. So again, I know that even during the trial, she was smiling a lot, but it definitely feels even more inappropriate today, as it is a very heavy day. But a lot of people are saying that she's delusional and that this is pretty on brand for Sarah Boone. And obviously Robin here saying very disrespectful to the family.
Yeah. And this is a particularly hard day for the family, because not only is it the sentencing, but they're going to have to get up and talk about the impact on their lives from the loss. Sitting in the trial is terrible, but in that sense, you're an observer. Now you're going to have to go up, get up and talk about your deep emotion and the loss of your brother, the loss of your son. I mean, it's a really difficult day for the family. So it's even more inappropriate for her to be acting up. So I saw a question as to whether the judge can limit her statement. I mean, theoretically, yes, but I think the judge will let her go for a while, if she does go for a while, without trying to control it.
Cookie Doodle asking, would the judge watch the courtroom feed live prior to taking the bench?
I don't know whether he's got a camera in chambers. He could. I doubt that he would, but he certainly could.
And then Lily Benjamin asking, is this her final appearance before Judge K?
Well, once the appeal to the appellate court is finalized, then this judge will have no jurisdiction anymore and it will be done. I think they might have a motion for a new trial still pending here. They've got some motion, I think, that hasn't been decided yet. And she would potentially be able to attend that hearing, although legal hearings, you don't have to have the presence of the defendant there, but you could potentially be at that hearing. And it may be, I mean, I suppose there's a potential that the judge would rule on that motion right now today during the sentencing hearing and get it all done. But it's almost the end for her in front of this judge, and I'm sure the judge could not be more pleased.
And Leo Wren here with a question, Joe. Hold on, I just lost it. Sorry, it's moving so quickly. Could it be thrown back to the original court for some reason, like in the Adelson case?
Well, theoretically, there might be an ability on appeal. If there needs to be a fact finding on an issue that's critical in an appeal, the appellate court can remand, which means to throw it back to the trial court to have a hearing on the question. It's extraordinarily unusual, but it is not impossible that something like that could occur. I don't know what it would be here, though, because the claim that the jurors were impacted, I don't think there would be a feasible way to send it back a year or 2 years later and ask the jurors about what happened 2 years before. And the other claims are straight legal claims. You don't need a fact hearing to decide whether the expert committed reversible error by giving an opinion that the defense said they hadn't heard before. And you don't need a fact hearing to decide whether the trial lawyer should have had more time to prepare the case, which are the appeal issues that I can see coming.
And Jenny Allison here, another friend of the show, has a question saying, once she's sentenced, how long will it take for the hearing for the new trial motion to take place? She won't be in Orlando anymore, so how does that all work? Yeah,
well, she could, I'm trying to think whether she's got a Sixth Amendment trial right to be there for a motion for a new trial. She does at sentencing. I'm not sure she has to be there for it, but they could do it via Zoom. They wouldn't have to have her present for that. And as I said, and I don't know how long it's going to take the judge to decide on that motion, whether the prosecutor has filed a response to it yet. But if they had to bring her back, you can always do it. But I think they would, if they thought they needed her or that she had a right to be there, that they could do it by Zoom. She's certainly looking at somebody and talking to somebody out there. At the trial, there were a couple of days when she apparently met a woman in prison, and they were in a girlfriend relationship, and that woman was at trial a couple of days, and during the trial, she turned around and smiled and talked with her on occasion. So I'm wondering if that woman is there today. Because there was no one else at trial that I can recall that she interacted with at all that was in the gallery.
Yeah, and that's what Joel had reported earlier. As you guys know, Joel was there for the entire trial, and he did confirm that her girlfriend was there for not for most of the trial. She was there for bits and pieces of it. So we're assuming that that's who she keeps looking back and smiling at. But regardless, I still think it's not very tasteful to be smiling and waving, right. And, obviously having all of these big emotions as his family is there as well.
Right. And I wouldn't be I mean, if there was a lip reader here, you could tell exactly what she was saying. I mean, she's articulating it very clearly. Yeah, that's right.
That's what La Femme said too.
And it may be that one of the other lawyers is sitting behind them. I mean, that conversation, she wasn't smiling there. So it could be somebody on the defense team, theoretically. I mean, we just don't know. I'm just guessing because we can't see that part of the gallery at all. We see the part that's sitting behind the prosecutor's table.
And Jerry saying, I'm surprised that she's allowed to talk to anyone in the gallery. I think that may be an attorney that she's speaking to right behind her. I know that when Joel was there, he had mentioned that the first row right behind Sarah was a pew that was reserved for her team and anyone that was there with the defense. So I do believe
somebody just sat forward, and it was clearly a male head that looked to be on the angle to which he was taught. There he is again. And the judge is not there. So she's sitting, I mean, the judge is not in the courtroom, so you don't have the court protocols in place yet. Yeah, see, doesn't that look like the direction she might have been looking when she was talking? Because it was over her right shoulder, and that's where he seems to be.
Yeah, so I guess this is Billy Lane here, the PI that she was talking to.
Okay.
The investigator.
So it's a defense team.
All right, Gerard here is asking, what is the sentencing range? Joe, can you give us a quick update?
Yeah, well, the judge said at least 22 and a half years, and I believe it's up to life for second-degree murder. And now we're getting a little of the two heads from the other side.
And again, you can see the camera there. It did pan over showing family, and it looks like there's a lot more family, friends there to obviously show support and be there for George Torres' side, who today his mother and his brother are expected to give their victim impact statements.
Do we know if it's the brother who testified at trial?
I assume it's the same brother, but I have not confirmed whether or not that's accurate. I would assume it would be them.
Okay. If I recall, he was very soft-spoken, very hard to hear, and found it very difficult to talk about it at all, even the facts of the information that he was providing. So if it's he, I'm sure it's going to be extraordinarily difficult for him to do this.
And George Torres' daughters are there. And again, one of them did go on Court TV, and she did do an interview. And she said that she had no hard feelings, but what she does want is justice for her father. Yeah. So that was an interesting interview. It was a short interview.
Yeah. One of them, the youngest, who was 15 at the time, I saw interviewed, and I don't know where it was, and she said that she had a really difficult time after his death, that, as you can imagine, that he was her best friend, and that she considered, what's the YouTube term that you have to use? Unaliving herself after it happened. So
Well, yeah, and that's the thing in all of these cases, Joe, is obviously there is always an immediate victim, but it's really the victims, that trickle effect of everyone around them. It really ripples down. And sometimes people that are connected to the victim, but also, you know, removed 3-4 times, are still very much impacted by everything that goes on, especially with a trial. I mean, it's not just the death, it's the trial, it's the sentencing, it's then having to live with the reality of that loss. And then how do you move forward? I know a lot of people like Mossberg Mom, who I happen to have her comment up here. She lost her husband. He was killed. He was murdered. And, you know, decades later, she says, you can't really move on. That's with you forever. So in these cases, it really is the victim, but also the family members and all of the other victims that are created in these cases as well.
Exactly. And, you know, we've all had loss. We've all lost parents, siblings, friends, you know, and so you know what loss is. And if it's a close relation or a close friend, you never get past it totally. You move on, but there are times when it just hits you. You know, you're in a shopping mall and you see someone who looks like that person, and it hits all over again. So just imagine if it's that, plus you have to live with the feeling of the suffering that somebody might have gone through before he was killed, or it didn't have to happen. You know, it didn't have to happen. It's got to be 1,000 times worse. So I can only empathize, and I feel lucky that I can only, or sympathize, I guess would be the right word, that I haven't lived through it, but it has to be just, you know, just hell. I will say that the daughters said that they would talk to George. One of them said every 3 or 4 days, but only as long as Sarah would let George stay on the phone with them. And she would start pushing and making him hang up. So when they were talking about, in fact, one of them said she was on the phone with him the night he was murdered. So bad.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I know that some of them said that they were not as close with George recently, but I know that in the interview they also mentioned that they didn't like Sarah Boone from the very beginning, and that was part of that.
Right.
We're going to listen in. Thank you to everyone for the super chats.
It looks like he has his law students there again, watching.
Calling State of Florida versus Sarah Boone, 2020 CF 2603, State.
Steve Cacciatore on behalf of the state. William J. for the state.
Defense.
James Owens for Sarah Boone.
Ms. Boone is seated at counsel's table. Ma'am, if you could please raise your right hand, Madam Clerk is going to go ahead and swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Ma'am, can you state your full name and date of birth for the record for us?
Sarah Boone, 10-10-7-7.
We are here for a sentencing. The jury returned a verdict on October 25, finding you, Ms. Boone, guilty of murder in the second degree. We were running a little bit late this afternoon. I apologize for that. I was in court all morning and took the opportunity to review all of your submittals from earlier this morning, Mr. Owens, including the victim or the character statements, the psychological evaluation by Dr. Harper, the motion for downward departure, the motion for new trial, and the state's response to same. Before we proceed with any sentencing in this matter, the court needs to address the defendant's motion for new trial and the state's response to the defendant's motion for new trial. Anything in addition you'd like to argue at this time, Mr. Owens, over and above what is contained in your motion, sir?
No, sir.
State.
No, sir.
All right. After reviewing the motion and the state's response to same, the defendant's motion for a new trial is denied. Based on the court's review of the record, the court's participation in the trial, and the review of all the evidence, and the court's prior findings and rulings at trial and prior thereto. With that, I believe that we're prepared to proceed with sentencing at this time. The court has reviewed the pre-sentencing investigation prepared by the Department of Corrections. Are there any housekeeping matters that we need to address, Mr. J or Mr. Cacciatore, before we proceed?
Not from the state.
Are there any housekeeping matters from your side of the ledger, sir, that we need to address, Mr. Owens?
Judge, I do have 4 lay witnesses that are going to testify. We've got Dr. Harper here to testify. Of course, my client's going to testify, but one of the 4 lay witnesses wants to appear by Zoom. She lives up in Minnesota. I don't know if that's allowed.
We don't have an objection to that. One of our witnesses will be providing an impact statement, would also like to appear on the court's virtual link as well.
Okay, so stipulated. If you need it, just let Anita know, and I can have her email it to you right now, the link.
We do have the link. She's waiting to get on, I guess.
Who might it be, sir? Of several people.
It should be Lana Albert.
She is here, sir. She's in the, she's viewing, her camera's off and she's, microphone is muted, but she's in the lobby.
Okay.
All right, with that, state, you may proceed.
Your Honor, at this time, we would like to take an impact statement from, I believe, Anna Torres, which you will be appearing virtually.
I see several guests, but I do not see Anna Torres in the virtual lobby, sir.
Well, I think while maybe she's having some issue logging on, we have also in-person witnesses.
We can proceed with those first, sir. Please.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Ma'am, good afternoon. Could you state and spell your name for the record for us?
Blanca Torres.
Okay. Ma'am, you can go ahead.
I just want to tell Sarah Boone that I don't hate her for what she did. And I always remember that evening when that lady came into my door and she knocked at the door. And she asked for my name. I said, I tell her my name. And then she said, can I come in? I said, okay, yes. And she told me to sit down. I never think that was going to be my son. And then she said my son was dead. Since that day, I can't sleep. It's hard for me to remember that moment My son is not here no more. She don't only kill my son, she killed a father, a brother, an uncle. It's been hard on my family because all the brothers, they will always work together. But now it's like something real. Love is missing. Sometimes when I look out the window, I'm waiting for him to come and say, Mom, I love you. She was always there. She called me. I missed us, Mommy. The last time that I talked to him was at 12 o'clock in January, New Year. He came to my bed and said, Mom, he woke me up and I said, Mom, I love you. Happy New Year. And since that day, I don't see him no more. He was my son. I love him. And I miss him a lot, and my family miss him a lot too. But I don't hear her. But you know what? I was blessed. She ain't gonna be blessed like me because I have my son. I raise him. I have his children, my granddaughter, my grandson, and she don't gonna be able to have that. And I did. I raised him. He wasn't perfect, but he was a good son. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. State anything further from this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Defense?
No, sir.
Thank you. You may call your next victim impact statement.
Victoria Torres.
I think this is the daughter, Victoria.
You do solemnly swear affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Ma'am, could you state and spell your name for the record for us, please?
Victoria Torres. My name is Victoria Torres. George is my brother.
Brother, sister.
Unfortunately, my family has experienced two horrifying tragedies. I just want to make it clear that George deserves justice. As far as my other brother and Sarah deserve to rot in jail. Sarah has caused a lifetime of pain, a lifetime of horrible images, a lifetime of hearing my brother George plead for his life. This is just this moment for all of you. For me and my family, it's forever. Such a simple thing as using a suitcase is so triggering. I try not to close it all the way. I leave at least like 2 or 3 inches for the zipper. And it might sound crazy, but it just helps me. She really has flipped my family's life upside down. And I just hope that we can truly get justice for my brother. just want to tell the team thank you so much for everything they did. Thank you.
Thank you. State anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Defense?
Yes.
Thank you.
Your Honor, could we see if Ms. Anna Torres has been able to make it online?
Do not see an Anna Torres in the lobby, sir. I have lots of guests, HHSA, Mr. Beck, Lana Albert, Jason Gunn.
No, that was beyond powerful.
Both of them were searing.
Your Honor, is there a cap to the link as to the number of individuals?
Not to my knowledge.
Could we just have just a moment?
Yes.
It's interesting. He didn't know the answer to that. Such raw emotion, so powerful.
Yeah, and oftentimes people will read statements or letters just because it's so difficult, but to hear them go up there and really just speak from the heart, I mean, nothing can beat that in terms of really feeling an iota of what they feel. Obviously, we're just watching. She said it. We're watching, but for her, this is her life. This is her reality. And they have to deal with this every single day. And little things are big things to them. She said, seeing a suitcase is triggering. Seeing it open or close is triggering.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing that his mother can get up and say, I don't hate her.
I can't believe, yeah, I cannot even imagine.
I just hope that getting the chance to say that in front of her to the judge at the hearing at least helps them a little get past it, to at least get those things out and say them formally with her sitting there. Not that it seems as though it's going to have much of an impact on her, but just awful. Wonder if anybody trying to get hold of Anna Torres, they said.
Yeah, they said Anna Torres. They said they believe she's trying to log on virtually.
Yeah, I wonder if anybody's trying to reach her by phone and maybe help her do it, or if she's got some sort of internet issue that's causing the problem.
And Wendy Rules here saying, I would have fallen apart over the mom's statement. What kind of person can just sit there, no emotions? I mean, it was, you and I are here on camera, Joe, and I will say it was hard to hold back tears, even just sitting here being so removed from it.
But it's the kind of person who can hear somebody saying he can't breathe in a suitcase and going upstairs to bed. That's the kind of person.
And a lot of people in the chat saying, how can she forgive? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't either.
Thank you to Vegas Vibes for the super chat and to Cat 3309.
Yes, sir, Mr. Cacciatore.
Your Honor, after speaking with Mr. Owens, given the fact that the victim's daughter is having difficulties with.
Is that her, Anna Victoria Torres?
Yes, sir.
Is that it? Is that who it is? All right,
She's
ma'am,
killed her daughter.
good afternoon. Can you hear us?
Good afternoon. I can hear you.
Okay, could you please state and spell your name for the record?
My name is Anna Victoria Torres, ANAVICTORIA TORRES.
Thank you, ma'am. I understand that you'd like to provide a statement to the court at this time. You may proceed.
Okay. Okay. So I'll be speaking for myself and my two siblings. The murder of our father has impacted us on so many levels and in different ways. I myself, for the first year, would wake up screaming every morning or night, wishing I was having a nightmare, only to wake up to remember all over again that my father is gone and I'll never be able to hear him say he loves me ever again. To know my siblings have been affected in such a way that they are now different. They have had a piece of their heart ripped away from them, all while her son gets to hear his mother's voice and see her alive is pathetic. Because of you, Sarah, my sister is heartbroken. Because of you, Sarah, my brother is left wondering when he will ever see his father again. The loss of my father has left me with chronic depression and anxiety. Seeing any moments of fatherly love or kindness being shown between others in real life or even on TV leaves me in complete shambles. Seeking therapy was a must in order to navigate through my workday without a random breakdown. Thoughts of my father's demise still enter my mind ever so often. I'm left either angry, sad, or sick to my stomach to think of how his final moments were. George Torres, my incredible father. Not only was he my father, but my best friend. My personal comic provided me with wisdom and knowledge, creative and loving dad, an older brother, an uncle, a cousin, a friend, a son, and above all, our father. He was human and deserved to be treated as such. My father, George Torres, was one of a kind, an absolute gem. Unfortunately, his light was dimmed on earth by evilness, but with us, we will forever make his name live on. Especially Sarah. I pray that you see his face when you see him at night. That is it.
Thank you. Anything further, state?
No, Your Honor.
Anything further of this witness?
No, sir.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anything further?
No other impact statements, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any other witnesses or evidence at this point in time, state?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Owens, you may proceed, sir.
Ms. Diane Smith. Judge, what do you want?
I have no issue with her being at the podium. If you want to move about the well to conduct your examination, that's fine, counselor. Ma'am, come on up. Come on up to this podium right here, ma'am. If you could, raise your right hand. Madam Clerk's going to go ahead and swear you in.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Ma'am, could you state and spell your name for the record for us, please?
Diane Smith, DIANE SMITH.
Okay, thank you very much. Counselor, you may inquire.
And Ms. Smith, tell the court a little bit about you.
I was a chaplain at the 33rd Street Jail for 30 years.
And have you been a chaplain at the jail here in Orange County?
Yes, Orange County Jail
Is it the same
for
jail
30
you're
years.
referring to? Okay. And during that period of time, did you have occasion to meet with Sarah Boone?
I did.
And was it over the course of how long?
I've known her 4 years.
And if you could tell the court what you'd like to say.
Okay. Well, I first met Sarah. She came in. We have a Christian dorm, and Sarah enrolled in our Christian program. And she was in my classes for a year. And she was very sincere in her efforts to change her life and to be a better person. And I found her very helpful. She was kind and good to people. She loved to serve. And she helped the new girls that would come in, the younger girls. She would mother them and be very kind and very helpful. And then after she graduated from the program, I was her counselor for the other 3 years. And I always found her, very sincere and, trying to do better. I spoke with many inmates that knew her and was associated with her. And they spoke very highly of her and said that, she was helpful and kind and tried to help other people. And I just found her to be, very sincere and trying to be a very good person and change and help people.
Was the Bible involved at all?
Oh, yes, it was all spiritual. Yes, it was spiritual growth plus character, growth and character, trying to just be a better person in general. She liked to serve other people, she would help the girls wash their clothes and show them around and teach. But spiritually, she grew very, very great and spiritually.
Thank you.
Hang on, ma'am, just 1 second.
Ma'am?
Hang on just 1 second, Ms. Smith. State any questions.
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you.
I'd like to call Christina Pena. Is right here.
Yeah, it's fine, Counselor. Thank you. Ma'am, come on up if you can. Raise your right hand. Madam Clerk's going to go ahead and swear you in.
Do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and the truth?
Ma'am, if you could state and spell your name for the record for us.
Christina Pena, Christina Pena.
All right, you may inquire, sir.
Ms. Pena, how old are you?
31,
And where do you live?
Orlando.
Now, it's my understanding, Ms. Pena, that you were in the county jail with Sarah Boone.
Yes.
How long were y'all in the same cell together?
Yes, I was in there for 4 years, but we were together for 3.
Okay. And I understand ultimately the charges against you were dismissed? And so you were released on what day?
April 4th this year.
2024?
2023.
2023. So you've been out for a pretty long.
I've been out for like 6 or so months now. Yeah, since April
Okay.
of this year, actually. Sorry.
April of 2024. And you said y'all were bunkmates there together for about 3 years?
Yeah.
I would assume that y'all got to know each other pretty well.
We did.
And if you could, if you'd like to speak on her behalf to the judge.
Sarah's one of my best friends, my only.
Take your time.
She's helped me a lot. Spiritually and like growing and she helps everybody. She's always, I don't know, spirit. She helped me a lot and she would come to me, she'd talk to me all the time and pick me up when I was down or if I didn't know something. She just good. I don't know. She was a good person to me. She just, mistakes happen. And she always helped people. She was always helping everybody in the dorm. She, even like her artwork, she did art. If anybody needed any help or needed anything, they'd come to her and she'd help them. And even if they, did wrong to her, she would still go back and help them and praise with them and pray over them and everything. It's just
Was she a little bit older than you?
Yeah.
How much older was she?
40 in her 40s.
Did you think of her as maybe an aunt or a big sister?
Big sister, yeah. She was like a big sister. Like a sister I never had. Because I have brothers, so I never, we clicked right away. I don't know. We'd be walking out in the backyard and she just would always try and talk to me, but I'm a quiet person and I don't trust a lot of people. So for me to open up and trust somebody, it's a lot. So.
And obviously y'all were there under difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
She assist you in getting through that?
Yes, and she helped me a lot with my my case, and I would help her with with hers too. We're both. Justice is not what it is. I don't know how.
Bless you.
we both helped each other out. I don't know.
Ms. Vignon, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any questions, State?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you.
Ms. Hill? Judge?
Yes, sir.
After Ms. Hill, I want to thank Ms. Albert.
Yes, sir.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Ma'am, good afternoon. Could you state and spell your name for the record for us?
My name is Mariela Hill, Mariela, last name Hill, Hill.
Thank you. You may proceed, sir.
Ms. Hill, briefly tell us a little bit about yourself.
I met Sarah in jail. I spent 3 months in jail and went through a lot of unfortunate circumstances myself.
All right, now this was in the Orange County Jail here in Orlando?
Orange County Jail.
And when would that have been? Do you recall the dates?
Yes, it was April, from April to June of this year.
Of this year,
2024,
2024.
correct. Yes.
And did you develop a relationship with Sarah Boone over the course of that 3 months?
Yes, yes. We met when I was moved to the B dorm, and I needed help with a form that I needed to complete. And one of the COs pointed to Sarah to help me out. And since that moment, we became really good friends. And she was so helpful, so kind, so respectful and loving, not just to me, but to everyone. And I have nothing but good things to say about her character, her loving heart, and how deep her faith is, her faith in God and believing in justice for everyone. So that's what I believe.
State, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hill. I appreciate it. Ms. Albert, good afternoon, ma'am. Can you hear me? This is Judge Kranick, and if you can, I would ask you to turn on your camera and unmute yourself at this time, please.
Sir, how do I unmute turn on my camera? I know how to unmute, but I'm not sure how to turn the camera on.
Turn the volume down.
So, ma'am,
Is that better?
When you join the link, there should have been an option for like a pull down on the left-hand side of the screen for you to open out or turn on a camera. I don't know what device you're appearing on, if it's a cell phone or a laptop.
It is an iPhone. Should I try to re-enter the room?
Yeah, try to do that. There should be an option for you to pick a camera. You'll either select the default camera and hopefully we'll be able to see you at that time.
Okay, let me just give me 1 second.
Sure.
It's not unusual at all for the state not to cross-examine victim witnesses at a sentencing hearing. Usually there's nothing much that the state wants to contest. You let the witness say whatever the witness is going to say. It has to be something unusual before the state would ask any questions. So this is pretty typical. And the defense almost never, in fact, I don't know of a case in which the defense cross-examined or asked questions of a victim who was giving an impact statement. So this is all really routine the way it's going.
It seems to be like there are a lot of witnesses, though, that are speaking on behalf of Sarah Boone.
Yeah, but the three so
Did that
far.
work? Can you see me?
I cannot.
Shoot. Yeah, it's saying default camera. It's saying front camera. I chose it. It didn't show my face or anything like that.
What's interesting so far is they're all people she met in jail. There's no one from.
And they've only known her 3 to 4 years. I mean, yeah, they met her in jail.
3 months. The last one was 3
All right,
months.
Miss Albert, good afternoon. If you could just state and spell your name for the record for us, please.
Certainly. Lana, Lana, Albert, Albert.
Okay. All right, Mr. Owens is going to ask you some questions. And if you could just answer them, ma'am, I would greatly appreciate it. Sir, you can proceed.
Miss Albert, do you have the ability to turn your volume down?
Yes, I just did. I can't hear you very well when I do that, though.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you, but very, very quietly.
How about now?
Yes, I can hear you. Am I okay?
Yeah, you sound a lot better. You were too loud earlier.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
All right, Miss Albert, tell the court a little bit about yourself briefly.
Well, I live in Minnesota. I currently have end-stage renal disease. Before I became disabled, I was a business owner in the Twin Cities here.
All right, and how old are you?
I am 50 years old.
All right, and you're considered disabled?
Yes, I am.
All right. And have you had an occasion since this event to establish a relationship with Sarah Boone?
Yes, I have. We have been friends for the past a little over 11 months.
And how do y'all communicate?
We've communicated a lot of phone calls, lots of tablet back and forth, and a lot of letters as well. I'd say many, many, many hours of time spent with each other.
All right. And do you want to speak on her behalf here today?
I would, please.
All right. Would you please tell the court what you would like for the court to know?
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Your Honor, for the privilege of speaking on behalf of my friend, Sarah Boone. I also want to extend my heartfelt condolences to everyone here affected by this terrible tragedy, which has brought us all here and listening in. Many, many articles and videos and opinions of Sarah have gone out in the airways and on the webs. Opinions that have been formed and commented on so much that it's hard not to give into the temptation to treat people like a comic book or a fictional character. In the case of my friend Sarah, the words narcissist, Karen, villain, many other things, they roll off the tongue with little regard to the humanity that is dismissed so flippantly. And under a lot of circumstances, I was one of those people, as I have a love of true crime. And becoming friends with Sarah has shown me that there's a lot more depth to the people I see on the screen. I'd like to share with the world and with the court about the Sarah Boone that I know. Sarah Boone is a kind, honest, and good person. The Sarah Boone I know is one who loves animals, especially the kind who are damaged and defenseless. How many of us would take in and pour love for a hearing impaired and a sight impaired pair of dogs? She has a natural instinct to help reach out and give of herself, her time and energy and love, especially to those who are hurting or damaged. You all have seen her fight for her own life and truth here. I tell you this, she fights even harder for those she loves, giving time, attention, and companionship without a single thought for her own gain or what somebody can do for her. And one huge example is in the matter of our friendship. As I said before, I have end-stage renal disease caused by a genetic illness called polycystic kidney disease. As my life has progressed, things I have taken for granted have been taken away from me. I could not appear in court in person because I can no longer walk, as my dialysis treatments have affected the circulation of my legs and has confined me to a wheelchair. To say that my life has radically changed is an understatement. Through it all, I have many friends and family I love and cherish. Sarah has distinguished herself differently in this way. In the course of getting to know her, I started sharing the progressing state of my health. It was like lightning had struck her. The moment Sarah had learned the depth of my struggles health-wise, she straight up offered strenuously to donate a kidney to me. I got to tell you this. I hope she's not mad for me showing this, but she had no hesitation, no concern over personal risk or personal gain. I want to convey to this, out and around the world, that is merely offering is a good and heroic act. I've had many friends. I've not had one outside of my brother who has offered me a kidney. That is huge. I don't have anything of equal value to give to her. And that's not the actions of a narcissist. She did it as a reflex action, as a good person. After the verdict came in October, we spoke that night. And I hope Sarah doesn't get mad at me again for disclosing this, but out of all the shock and seriousness of what had happened in the court, the thing that made her emotionally break was that she realized she could no longer be a donor to me. I mean, I was sitting there like, hey, it's going to be okay. But she was so broken up, she couldn't help me. That's a friend. She is not, nor does she come up anywhere remotely close to being a narcissist. And one more thing before I go. Social media has worked to rip the blindfold off of Lady Justice, to take the sword out of her right hand and start assassinating Sarah's character. However, the scales are the balance. As it says in Psalm 85, mercy and truth are met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other. Justice isn't justice without mercy. Our pursuit of righteousness isn't complete and right without peace. Thank you, Your Honor, for the honor of speaking for my friend Sarah Boone. I hope that your justice is mixed with mercy here today. Thank you.
State, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Any follow-up, Mr. Owens?
No, Judge.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Albert. I appreciate you.
Like to call Dr. Harper?
You want her on the stand or?
I'm okay with her on the stand.
On the stand?
No, she can be right. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I want to see Kevin.
Judge, you want her on the podium?
No, she'd be at the podium. That's fine. Doctor, good afternoon. If you could please raise your right hand. Madam Clerk's going to go ahead and swear you in. If you could, Doctor, state and spell your name for the record for us, please.
Dr. Julie Harper, Julieharper.
All right, thank you. Counselor, you may inquire.
And Dr. Harper, we all know we were here a few weeks back for the trial, and your testimony, so the judge knows quite a bit about your testimony, but if you could, I know that you prepared a report, and we have submitted that to the court, which the court has read, the state has a copy. And I don't know if you want to refer to that or just speak on your own about Sarah Boone and what you did to assess her, and then any opinions that you want to express.
All right. I think that during trial testimony, I reviewed all of the documents, excuse me, and all of the records that were available. They're documented in my report as well. In addition to the forensic clinical interviews that I conducted, I also have had the opportunity to talk to her brother, Philip Paulson, in the interim since the trial, and I included his information in my report as to her family background.
If you could give the court a synopsis of what your findings are, or what you uncovered maybe from the brother, whatever you think the court needs to hear this relevant material to his decision in this case.
So referring to the summary section of my report, I'll keep it a brief, but I'll outline the highlights that I feel like haven't been conveyed before, which is an understanding of Ms. Boone's early family life, in that she is the middle child of her parents' union, and that her parents did not have a happy marriage. They didn't provide an opportunity to have a good role model as to how to have a partnership together. Ms. Boone was born in close proximity to her youngest brother, 11 months apart. And in my clinical experience and training, I would say that that disrupted her attachment with her mother, some being close in proximity with her younger brother, whose temperament just seemed to suit a relationship with her mother better than her own. So ultimately, Ms. Boone bonded with her father, though he wasn't described by either child as an affectionate person. He was somebody that was there for her at sporting events and more of a primary parent for her in that way. His untimely death by heart attack during her high school years was marked by her brother as a turning point for her in how she was acting at home, her demeanor, her relationship with her mother took a turn for the worse. She was not coping well. She was using substances based on what her brother was saying. And it is my opinion that that early lack of foundational relations with her mom and not feeling very secure, the death of her father, destabilized her. That's a period of your life when you're leaving high school, when you should have formed a very solid foundation to go out in the world. And I don't think that that's what she had at that moment. She bonded easily with Mr. Boone, and you can see that there are elements of that early difficulty with her relationships because she took on a parentified role, in my opinion, during that relationship. And therefore, there's a power imbalance in that she was making decisions and not, again, having an equal relationship. I think that that led her to a sense of being a need to be right, a need to feel like she is the one that's making good decisions, to have some ego support by being in the right all the time with Mr. Boone. And I think that that led to some behaviors that she carried over into her relationship with Mr. Torres, in that she's parentified around him and acting more like a parent-child relationship, being a facilitator of housing and applications for jobs and things like that. So again, there's a power imbalance that I think was very seriously misaligned, as her brother and the property manager of their apartment had verified. They saw her being abused, physically abused in serious ways, or the effects of the abuse in bruising or calls to them. It is my opinion that she called for help, but when people got tired of her not leaving Mr. Torres, they stopped responding to those calls. And basically, Ms. Boone handled things on her own. And as other people with healthier boundaries probably would have left, she being acting out the pattern of intimate partner violence did not leave. She stayed long past when it would have been smart for others, or others would have said to leave, sorry. The undergirding of that not leaving the relationship is a long-term anxiety problem that became post-traumatic stress disorder. There is an earlier instance of exposure to traumatic stress in that she was the person in the hospital after her father died who found him having students perform CPR on his dead body. So that was an early exposure to high traumatic stress, witnessing that incident. And based on her brother's description, that was something that changed her. When a person is exposed to numerous compounding stressors, their adrenaline system is changed. It alters your body. And things that might be an otherwise neutral situation, you tend to have a cascading adrenaline response to that. And I think that that ultimately for her, as she succumbed to other instances of serious physical abuse from her partner, became post-traumatic stress disorder. I do think that that is a condition that is still existent even while she's in jail. It's something that she needs treatment for because those triggers are unmitigated, meaning that she hasn't really had the kind of therapy to address them and reduce her adrenaline and anxiety responses when she thinks of past instances of traumatic events that have happened to her. You can also respond to post-traumatic stress disorder clinically by using antidepressant therapy, and that would be something that could assist her ultimately in reducing symptoms if she had counseling and antidepressant therapy.
Now, Dr. Harper, I know you testified in the trial that, in your opinion, she suffered as a married spouse syndrome that is legally recognized in Florida, in the courts of Florida.
That's correct.
And I understand that that is tied to this intimate partner violence, which is maybe the same thing, but there's a complex mental health issue that ties into that. Can you speak on the complexity of that whole cycle that one such as Sarah Boone and George Torres were involved in?
Certainly. So intimate partner violence is not a diagnosis. It's a pattern of events that occur between two partners in which the power dynamic is altered by the physical abuse or behaviors that are controlling in nature to the point that someone's safety is threatened. It's common for victims of that to have a complex mental health condition, often including depression, anxiety, and substance abuse problems. And what might be substance abuse to cope with the problem, like numbing oneself, will sometimes result in its own diagnosis. The pattern of intimate partner violence, I think we covered in the trial, but just in summary about that, there are phases in which at first bonding of the two partners might be something positive. They've got something in common or have pleasurable time together. And then the secondary phase of that is when there is change in dynamic and some kind of traumatic event occurs, some instance of physical violence. And then there's a third phase in which it's like a honeymoon phase where they're trying to right the relationship. So in phase one, when they're having something pleasurable, the tone shifts. Phase two, there is some kind of incident. And phase three, there's a honeymoon phase. As that pertains to anxiety, I think that a person who suffers from intimate partner violence never stops experiencing that hypervigilance, waiting for the next instance of violence to occur. So even though they may look happy, they might be experiencing something positive, they've not really relaxed because their memory that could or will occur again is still in their mind. So they haven't fully stopped experiencing intimate partner violence. It's just what phase of the process they're in.
Now, and Dr. Harper, it goes into more detail in your report, which I supplied to the court, which is a total of 11 pages, and I believe that's confidential documents.
That's what's been marked. I don't believe it's been filed in the court file.
Okay.
If it has, that's something if it needs to be, it's something we can address. I have reviewed it. It does reflect confidential privilege information on the first page. I don't believe it's been filed in the court file unless you did it. Okay. It already has been? All right, appreciate it.
Under seal.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, sir.
And Dr. Harper, you're aware that the defense has filed a defendant's motion for downward departure.
Yes.
And we've listed several factors under paragraph 3, the capacity of the defendant to appreciate the criminal nature of her actions and conform with requirements of law or substantially impaired, that she requires specialized treatment for a mental disorder that is not related to substance use or addiction, although you agree that she does suffer from alcohol use disorder.
So she has an underlying mental health disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and I additionally diagnosed her with alcohol use disorder, which is separate.
But you agree she does require specialized treatment for a mental disorder that's not related to the substance abuse or addiction?
That's correct.
And you agree she's amenable for treatment?
Yes.
And you would agree that she acted under extreme duress in this unique homicide case?
Yes.
And you would agree that the uniqueness of the circumstances, the facts and circumstances surrounding the case, that the offense was committed in an unsophisticated manner?
Yes.
And it was isolated?
That's my understanding as well.
Other than she had the charge where both of them were charged at one time, I think she had the strangulation allegation, the felony case that was ultimately dismissed when both of them were arrested.
She had a prior felony case. Facts are different, of course, than this particular case we're here today.
Dr. Harper, I believe that's all the questions I've got, unless you would like to say anything, if I've missed anything, of course.
No, I think
Okay, and if not, it's in the report.
yes.
Any questions?
Yes, can she take the stand so I can be podium?
Yes, that's fine.
It doesn't surprise me that the state is going to cross her. And she's repeating some of the trial testimony, and actually at trial, I don't think she would have been able to say everything she did here.
In pages 1 and 2 of your report, you go through the sources of your information, correct?
Yes.
And that would include 8 interviews that you had with her from the course of August of 2020 through September of 2024, correct?
There were 9 interviews, but 8 dates of service are listed.
You did the Miller Forensic Assessment of Symptoms Test, or MFAST.
That's right.
Inventory of Legal Knowledge, ILK.
That's right.
Clinician Administered PTSD Scale 5 examination.
Yes.
You consulted with her attorney.
Yes.
Videotaped interviews from this court case number of Sarah Boone, interview part 1 and 2, Abraham Moreno interview, Brandon Moats interview, Brian Boone interview, Juan Torres interview, and Melissa Sexton interview, correct?
Yes.
You reviewed the autopsy photos.
Yes.
You reviewed some of the digital forensic exhibits, including the Apple iPhone XS and a Samsung SMJ 327 T1 photographs from those 2 devices.
Yes.
You reviewed Bates stamped discovery pages 1 through 413.
That's correct.
The crime scene photos are photos of scene taken on June 19th of 2020.
Yes.
Aspire Health records.
Yes.
And who do those pertain to?
Aspire Health records are for Sarah Boone.
Florida Hospital Medical Group records.
Yes.
And who do those records pertain to?
That is also for Sarah Boone.
And Aspire, is that a mental health treatment facility?
It has an emergency department record, but that would be the place where she was detained under the Baker Act.
And it is routine and common in the practice of forensic psychology or psychiatry to rely on the records of other such practitioners.
As a source of information, sure.
You reviewed the deposition of Dr. Tanya Warner.
I did.
You reviewed the trial testimony of Sarah Boone, Brian Boone, Dr. Michael Brannon, Dr. Tanya Werner, correct?
Yes.
The jury verdict form dated 10/25/24.
Yes.
Witness list notice of filing amended
Yes.
on this case. Records of Jorge Torres or George Torres involving case numbers 2019 MM 5114, a 911 call in PDF, case 2019 MM 7193, case 2019 MM 7193, Torres Public Records, case 2019 MM 7193, Torres Photos, Central Florida Primary Care Records, Advent Health Orlando Medical Records, correct?
Yes.
And those latter records that I just mentioned, those for Mr. Torres and not Ms. Boone, correct?
That's right.
Then you reviewed Sarah Boone written correspondence, Sarah's listing of domestic violence incidents, Sarah's writings regarding missing days of work and Baker Act, and a 74-page life story.
That's right.
And then case 2018 CF 10573, public records and photos.
Yes.
And a telephone interview with Melissa Sexton, the property manager, which you conducted on October 1st, 2024.
Yes.
And a telephonic interview with Philip Paulson, the defendant's brother, on November 26, 2024.
Yes.
Where has Ms. Boone been housed and living since February of 2020?
At the Orange County Jail.
And does the Orange County Jail provide mental health services to inmates?
It does.
And you already testified you would routinely, as a forensic psychologist, review records kept of a psychological or psychiatric treatment of a patient or a client, correct?
Yes.
In this particular case, have you reviewed any mental health records generated by the Orange County Jail for Ms. Boone?
No, I have not had the opportunity to do that.
So for the last 58 months or so, if she was being seen by the mental health treatment staff at the jail, you have not reviewed those records.
That's correct.
And they are overseen at the jail, in the Orange County Jail, by a psychiatrist. Are you aware or not?
If the person's level of mental health intervention deems them eligible for psychiatry, then they will.
And any diagnosis or lack of diagnosis that they have had during the course of the last 58 months, you are unaware of because you did not review the records.
That's right.
I don't have any other questions.
Any redirect examination?
No, no, Judge.
All right, thank you.
One question. Dr. Harper, I didn't ask you to review those records, did you?
No.
Thank you.
Judge, I believe you said it at the very beginning that I had submitted several letters on behalf of Miss Boone, and she didn't hear that, but I wanted her to be made aware.
Yes, ma'am.
And you don't actually read those letters into the record, but you did read them.
I have reviewed them. They're in my binder here. How many do I have? Yes. Give me a second. I can tell you.
She's
I
still in
have-
charge.
I have 6 handwritten letters. First one is 1 page. Second one is 2 pages. Third one is 1 page. Fourth one is 2 pages. Fifth one is 2 pages. Sixth one is 2 pages. I have a typed letter from Diane Smith, the assistant chaplain. I have another typed letter from a Nicole Ray, a typed letter from a Stephanie L., typed letter from Philip Paulson, a email from Lana Albert, 2 pages in length, and a 2-page email from a Danielle Parsons.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Judge, I would like to call Sarah Boone.
You may proceed.
If you could take this.
Yes, please.
I'll be interested to see if she mentions George by name.
Ms. Boone, you can be seated. You've been previously sworn. You may inquire, sir.
For the record, just state your name again.
Sarah Boone.
Now, this is unlike a trial, so you're allowed to speak in a narrative form, as well as I understand you have taken some notes or written a letter that you want to read from, and then you want to speak to the court after that.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and get started?
This is actually an edited version of. I had a lot to say. I've had a lot of time to think about things, and I didn't really know how to put it on paper. And I didn't know how much I could say or how little I should say. So what I have here is, like I said, an edited version. But I would like to read the more important parts that I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual trial. And on top of what I have on paper, this is just the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to read this, and then if I may, I would like to address everyone in my apology on top of my statement.
You may proceed, ma'am.
Kintu sukuroi is a kind of Japanese ceramic style which means to repair with gold. In this tradition, when a ceramic piece breaks, an artisan will fuse the pieces back together again using liquid gold or gold dust lacquer. So rather than being covered up, the breaks become more obvious and a brilliant new piece of art emerges from the brokenness. It embraces flaws, weakness, and imperfections, and also teaches the essence of resilience. Every crack in a ceramic piece is a part of its history, and each piece becomes more beautiful because it has been broken. This is the wisdom of Kintu sukuroi. In my wisdom and with all of my repairs, then, now, and ongoing, God is, has been, and will always be my artisan. All of my gold is forgiveness. This has held me together, made me shine brighter, and overcome the damage caused by George Torres, the Torres family, the justice system, Orange County Corrections Department, social media, scoundrel detectives, infamy, defamation, ongoing constitutional rights violations, second-degree murder, forced into being pro se. Just as gold is very precious, forgiveness is invaluable. Forgiveness is not an attempt to change or forget who, what, or how you've lived through to be so gold, but an act of grace, humility, and considerable self-compassion to be set free from sorrow. Withholding forgiveness denies your brilliance and adds even greater grief and deeper heartache, irreparable cracks on top of the already that no one deserves, no matter the pain or disappointment, untruths or injustice. It doesn't matter, as the more broken you are, even though now different than before, you've become more outstanding and more extraordinary. Above all, when you let go of blame, misunderstandings, excuses, give up your anger and cease from resentment, this is forgiven. And when you forgive, you heal. And when you heal, you move forward. My goal begins with George Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked, punched, spit on, raped, stabbed, choked, laughed at, pushed, pulled, dragged, whipped, tripped, stole from, lied, terrorized, threatened, humiliated, forced, degraded, made me cry. Every time he tried to end me, defeat, or destroy. I forgive George for beating me senseless, for trying to sleep because I had to go to work or my son's field trip the next day, for ruining my deceased family's heirlooms, traditions, and keepsakes, my son's furniture, destroying the television we watched together, for wrecking our townhome by breaking windows, punching holes in the walls and doors, ramming his entire body into glass doors, kicking in my front and back door over and over and over, for breaking or removing the locks from all of the doors and sometimes the knobs altogether, so I had nowhere to feel safe, including the sacred space of my son's room where he beat me bloody on his bed. For terrorizing and threatening my blind and deaf dogs by leaving the gate open I built to keep them safe, telling me he hoped I'd find their bloated dead body in the pond or scrape their remains off of the pavement, for kicking them off of the bed and throwing across the room because they were trying to protect me. For threatening to make me unrecognizable to my son by breaking all of the bones in my face, like his brother Moses did to him after he kept seeing all of the bruises from George beating me, like all of the times their father beat their mother. For all of the drunken rages and fist fights with so many neighbors when wandering into their apartments during hunting expeditions after I had escaped. For drowning me in liquor and wine because I didn't want to drink, causing me to urinate on myself, then butting the end of the bottle in my face, giving me 2 black eyes and a bloody nose. For making me experience what it is to be sodomized. Threatening to kill my friends and the neighbors when they checked on me to make sure I was alive and in one piece. For threatening to burn down our townhome and set my car on fire because I got a job. For holding me hostage on weekends my son was supposed to come over by keeping my keys around his neck, my phone in his crotch, and a butcher knife stuck in the middle of the table as a warning not to ask anything or try to leave. For stabbing me in the leg and not letting me call 911 for an ambulance or seek help, where I nearly bled to death until I concocted a lie to save him from being arrested. For destroying my phone with a hammer because my son called. For me experiencing ever being arrested and after today, prison. For beating me almost blind, crushing my occipital lobe. For having me experience what it means to see stars like in the cartoons, where a character has a tall lump on their head. I had that too, and many times. For dragging me downstairs by my hair in the middle of the night just to sit next to him. For taking my car driving drunk with my debit card to buy more alcohol while I slept, even after I kindly explained the importance of my car to take my son to school foremost, me to work, and he to his batterers intervention classes and probation officer meetings, where I would be forced to sit for hours in the parking lot waiting for him. For causing me so much trauma and pain, mentally, physically, emotionally, I had to be hospitalized more than once. For destroying my reputation and integrity, for my M for murderer scarlet letter, not letting me feel safe to live, talk to other people, spend time with my son, have a job, friendships, simply go to the bathroom with the door closed, or go to sleep soundly or comfortably. I forgive George for lying, for him trying in so many ways, so many times, to end me with his terrifying love. I also forgive the Torres family, his mother and father foremost, also his 2 ex-wives and daughters, all for knowing who George was capable of and has done in the past, his history of violence and where he learned it, then to keep turning a blind eye when I would ask for help. All of his siblings, including Torres, who is now on his way to prison for stabbing the mother of their baby in the side of her head. For everyone who knew what George was doing to me, sometimes how and when, but allowed and enabled. I forgive them for caring too late. I hope they all ask themselves while quiet and comfortable in bed at night the uneasy question, what could I have done to stop this from happening to both of them? And after all the time Sarah tried to, by asking for help from all of us and so many times. Another great contributor of my gold is social media, with its greed, insensitivity, deception, obvious exploitation, and advantageous gain from my criminal case as a whole, and for sentencing me by anticipation as a result of ignorance and hate, conjured and fabricated by the organized crime that is social media, which condemned me in the court of global public opinion since the beginning. My family law case is the new prey waiting to be picked apart and pillaged from me being made infamous by social media in my criminal case. It simply seems I cannot forgive and be forgiven and move forward. Social media has made me a pariah. It has caused great oppression and undeniable disadvantages, especially by broadcasting and manipulating my cases online. In my criminal case, as a result, my opportunities to be given a fair, proper, and uninfluenced, successful conclusion was heavily depleted and poisoned. I forgive them. Also, all of the media tycoons for not having a life of their own, trying so desperately to make themselves seem so right by making me appear so wrong. Forgiveness for prejudgment, ridiculous theatrics, lies, making and taking blood money from my and others' misfortunes, accidents, and catastrophes. It's all over their hands and their keyboards. And even after all that's been said and done, theorized, hypothesized, scrutinized, and blasphemed in my case, still no one knows me. In the end, I forgive myself for not choosing my life sooner, for not being more brave, vigilant, bolder, and outspoken, stronger, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, for being hopeless, desperate, simple-minded, weak, and inexperienced. I forgive myself for not realizing I was enduring a life of domestic violence and that the vicious cycle of never ends. I had nothing to compare to. I've never been hit by a man ever before in my life. I was raised hitting a woman was wrong and should never happen. No excuse. I forgive myself for not escaping permanently, for not fighting back sooner to save myself, my son, my dogs, home, and car. Having 20/20 hindsight, thinking of everything I could have done differently or better to avoid the outcome. I think about this every day since. Also, of all the good days we had together, for him at least, while I was constantly in hyperdrive, high alert, and paranoid, making sure I did everything right all the time. If not, the great possibility I would be ended as George threatened me with so many times before. I forgive myself for falling in love with a monster, and no matter how grotesque he may become, I still loved him, hoped, and forgave. I tried breaking the spell so he wouldn't be a monster anymore. I saw who he was inside. George made me then, now, and always love him for all of his cracks also. We made each other our own brilliant pieces of art from the cracks and repairs. Unfortunately, not all cracks can be. In all of my forgiveness, George is my greatest lesson and will forever be a part of me. I think of him every day and still speak to him when alone on the rec yard. I ask his forgiveness and that he looks for me at the gates of heaven so I can tell him how sorry I am, endlessly, and that I never stopped loving him. In all of it and still. When I first came to jail, I put my mat under my bed and cried all day and all night for months, only falling asleep from being so exhausted with grief. I wrote him letters. I wrote his family and his daughters, apologizing for asking for their forgiveness. But due to fear that my life or sons would be jeopardized, I did not send. I am sorry. I cannot begin to fathom any of their grief and sadness. Please forgive me. Almost everything reminds me of him, seeing my stab wound especially every day especially. It truly reminds me that all I really did live through. George haunts me. He is everywhere. I believe because I do still love him, think of him, and miss his laugh the most. In my heart, I know he is with me and understands that this tragedy was not intentional. I hope everyone can, his family foremost. I didn't mean for this to happen. Please wholeheartedly know that, and always, I would never. Forgive me, George. Forgive me, Torres family. Forgive me, Judge Cranick. To the entire planet, please forgive me. I graciously and humbly ask for consideration, for forgiveness to be extended instead of judgment, for reconciliation and restoration for all of us to move forward. My apology is profuse and ceaseless. Allow me, please, to brush off the muck, wipe the blood off of my face, and fix the cuts in my skin. I ask for understanding in what really happened and for how long, for second chances, repentance, and redemption, to advocate for all domestic violence survivors, to help them overcome, heal, and still hope, always, to make their voices heard, to confidently walk with all of their scars on the outside and the inside, to help them not ever become a casualty of domestic violence as so many others, to stop the abuse and maltreatment before it's too late. There is always hope, and you can survive. In my soft-spoken conclusion, I ask this: would I be the darling mother, celebrated woman of the year, if it were I who died? How many daughters, mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, nieces, and friends have been because they did? I am a survivor. Learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke oppressors, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Isaiah 1:17, all-encompassing, protect the abused.
Ms. Boone, is that the end of your written statement?
Yes.
Now, gathering your thoughts, did you want to make an oral statement?
I do.
All right, would you do that now?
Yes, please. My statement, my verbal statement, is primarily to the Torres family, to the judge, to his daughters. I know you all know who I really am, and that I did care for George, and that I do still love George. I know you know that we had very many good days, and I take offense to the statement of being said that this is just for a moment. Right now with me here in the courtroom in front of you all, this is just for a moment. But the moments before that, in order for me to be here, is endless. It's everlasting. The scars that I have on the inside, my outside scars have healed except for my stab wound. But this has changed me as a person to see things differently and to understand things differently and to not be weak and just try to protect yourself, and forever, regardless of the time that I may receive from today, I forever will have this experience. I forever will have George Torres with me in my heart, in my mind, my body, and my soul. As he and I used to say that we were one soul split into two bodies. This is not just for a moment. It may be for everyone in this courtroom, but when I leave, this is forever. When you all leave, that this is forever. This is forever for everyone here and those who it matters to most. I am one of those who will experience this forever. I'm sorry. Words do not define my shame, and I don't know what else it is that I can say and convey to the Torres family how this happened. The ifs and whys and how really don't matter. It happened, and I'm sorry. Words cannot describe. And I hope that everyone can forgive me, the Torres family most of all, and his daughters, because I know what he meant to them. And I don't think that anybody ever understood what he meant to me and I to him. And I ask for forgiveness.
Ms. Boone, I have just one or two questions, if you don't mind. And you can speak on it if you want or not. But this is a unique case, and one of the reasons it's so unique is that you were in jail for 4.5 years prior to your trial. And I understand that when you were brought up as a child, that you did have some spirituality in your family, some church, some religion.
Always.
But I understand that you got away from that. Did you have a chance during the 4.5 years to look back at your spirituality?
Absolutely. You know, everyone supposes that this is one of the worst experiences of my life, and it's actually been one of my greatest. If I were not beaten to death, I was going to work myself to death on the outside. And I never had time to get back into my Bible and to pray and to be with the Lord. And I, being here incarcerated, have had time, of course, to get closer to God, to reacquaint myself to Him and realize what it's all about. This is all temporary. And when I say temporary, I don't mean by being set free in jail or from prison or wherever else. It means being set free and temporary, meaning that you work for something higher. You work for God, that you strive for your crown to be placed upon your head by Jesus Christ by being said, "You have done well, my good and faithful servant." I've always tried to be a good and faithful servant. I was just a servant as opposed to doing all that I can when my family were alive and I was going through everything up to this point. I've become so much more closer to the Lord, and it's made me such a better person. And I hope that I am an example going forward of the Lord's light and can draw many people to me because of it.
Any follow-up, State?
No, I assumed that was the final word.
Thank you. She can return back to council's table. Anything else from your side of the ledger, Mr. Owens?
No more witnesses, Judge, just arguments.
Okay. Anything else in rebuttal or just proceed to argument, State?
Just proceed to argument.
Okay. All right. Once Ms. Booth's seated, you can proceed with your argument, either Mr. J or Mr. Cacciatore.
Wow.
You may proceed, sir.
Your Honor, I'm going to start my argument by what I anticipate Mr. Owens will bring up in his presentation regarding the plea offer in this case. That she was offered the resolution in this case of 15 years in the Department of Corrections to begin with. I think it's important, though, that the entire circumstance of that plea offer is put forward. And there's something very critical to that. It's not just 15 years in the Department of Corrections. It's 15 years in the Department of Corrections, but it's predicated on something. And the consideration that it's predicated on is the defendant coming to court and accepting responsibility for her actions. For her coming to court and saying, "I am responsible for George Torres's death, and I accept the punishment that comes with it." That consideration was never given in this case. And because that consideration was never given in this case, the offer of 15 years in no way represents what this case is worth, or what George Torres's life is worth. That is an offer predicated on a particular circumstance, a circumstance of a first-time defendant accepting responsibility and giving every benefit of the doubt in coming to court and saying that they are ready to be punished. Those conditions were never met. So then we turn to this case, and we turn to this crime, and we turn to the actions of the defendant of taking the law into her own hands and murdering George Torres. She has never shown remorse for that. She didn't show remorse for that here today. She again painted herself as the victim. She's the victim of George Torres. She recounted the litany of evil deeds and mistreatments that he perpetrated upon her. She's the victim of George Torres' family. She's the victim of the police. She's the victim of social media. It's all about Sarah Boone. Everything's about Sarah Boone, about how she is the victim. And Sarah Boone sentenced every one of George Torres' loved ones to a life sentence. Just like she sentenced George Torres when he was in that suitcase. George Torres lived out his last nightmarish circumstance in that suitcase, begging to be let out for several minutes, which undercuts any argument that this was somehow unsophisticated. There was ample time and opportunity over and over for her to do something different, but she went forward with taking the law into her own hands and ensuring that George Torres was never getting out of there, while she went up to bed and went to sleep for hours on end. She can't say that she was in duress for the same reason. She was in such duress of George Torres that she goes upstairs and goes to sleep for 11 hours. Your Honor, there's been nothing from the testimony of Dr. Harper either that establishes any type of diagnosis that would give this court a basis to downward depart. Dr. Harper has put blinders on to the fact that she has been incarcerated for 58 months. 58 months with the opportunity to receive mental health treatment, and the expert witness is absolutely incurious about what any of those records or diagnosis or anything that would have been there would have said. There is no valid basis for a downward departure in this case. She deserves a life sentence. Thank you.
Mr. Owens, response?
Just credit. First off, I want to thank you for taking the time to hear our side, hear the witnesses, and review the letters on Sarah Boone's behalf. We've all been here for this trial. We've all been here for other trials. We've all got some age on us. We've all got some life experience on us. And this is a unique case. This was a unique homicide. It was a unique death. And as we all know, a lot of these cases are not black and white. They're shades of gray. And these crimes don't occur in a vacuum. That there's generally a history, especially involving a domestic couple, a history that comes into play that must be explored. And a lot of what Sarah Boone testified to here today probably happened behind closed doors. And we all know that many times we do not know what happens behind closed doors between a man and a woman in their home, unless there is some reason for the neighbors or law enforcement or somebody else to get involved. And that happened in this case. And so gradually over time, as this event occurred, there was an investigation, and it was learned that there was a history of domestic violence involving these two parties. And what we learned was that physically there was violence, and there were photographs to establish that, as were introduced in the trial. And then there was testimony from experts, not only the defense expert, Dr. Harper, that Sarah Boone was the victim, and she was a victim of intimate partner violence, but coupled with the fact that the state's expert testified on the stand at the trial that Sarah Boone was a victim of intimate partner violence, that she suffered from this domestic or this battered spouse syndrome as the hands of George Torres. So there's two sides to it. And in a domestic violence situation like that, 95% of the women get out of that relationship. When violence starts to occur, they've either been raised a certain way, they have a certain self-esteem about themselves where they refuse to put up with it, knowing that it's wrong, knowing that they can do better. But there is a small percentage throughout the country that, for whatever reason, mental health issues, addiction issues, whatever it is, it's complex. Financial reasons, children are involved, whatever. If you do any studying on it, there are circumstances where there is a group of women, predominantly women, it can happen to men, but majority of the time it's a woman that gets caught in this cycle of what we term as intimate partner violence. And court heard the testimony about the cycle that occurs. It's over a period of time and it repeats itself, and you go through these phases. And a lot of times the victim's not a great historian at trying to articulate it. She tried to do it here today. And I think on Sarah Boone's behalf, she is a unique individual. She's got the personality that she's got. I don't know, you heard from Dr. Harper that a lot of that was formulated based on the way her mother did not bond with her, the way that her father was the way that he was, the fact that she lost several relatives at a young age, and the trauma that can result. We heard from Dr. Harper that she did suffer from post-traumatic stress as it relates to that trauma in early childhood, and then again as it relates to the events that occurred between Mr. Torres and her. So it's complicated, Judge. It's complicated. But the jury has spoken. Sarah Boone was entitled under Florida law to present that defense, and she did. That testimony was allowed to be presented. She was allowed to testify. But the jury spoke. And so here we are today with you in a position to decide what is justice for Sarah Boone. And I don't know you that much other than our time together, but from what I know you try to do the right thing. And that's what we're asking the court to do. To have some discernment, to have some understanding of the unique situation that Sarah Boone found herself in. And quite frankly, Judge, this all didn't occur behind closed doors. A lot of this was in the public eye. Mr. Torres had, I believe, 3 criminal cases before the courts of this county in which Sarah Boone was a victim. Mr. Torres was the accused. Those cases were dismissed. We know from the history of this domestic violence field that that's normal, that Sarah Boone every time either tried to bond him out or tried to get the case dismissed. At some point, somebody has to stop. Somebody has to say, wait, what's going on here? This keeps repeating. It's going to get worse. Something's going to happen. The system failed, Sarah Boone. I'd ask for you to consider that. The circumstances surrounding that failure and what led us here today. I've asked the court to consider a downward departure. I believe you've gotten a copy of the score sheet.
Not since before trial.
Okay.
Is the score sheet stipulated too?
Yes, sir.
All right, you may approach. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Judge, I was provided that here today, and I believe, I can't remember the total number of months that it involves, but divided by 12, I think it's 20 months. 20.6 is the low end of the guidelines or something about.
It's 246.0 months based on the score sheet.
I did the calculation, but I believe that the low end is 20 years. I'm sorry, 20 years, 20.6 years state prison, I believe is the low end.
20.5. Yes, sir.
And as the court knows, I believe it's on page 3. There are some aggravators that the court can consider in opposing the sentence, and then there are a list of mitigators that the court can consider in downward departing, meaning going lesser than the low end of the guidelines. And in the defendant's motion for downward departure, we mentioned, and I had Dr. Harper testify about 2 or 3 of the grounds, and the court needs to only find one to go below the guidelines. The capacity of the defendant to appreciate the criminal nature of her actions and to conform said actions to the requirements of the law were substantially impaired. Judge, I don't have to reiterate the facts and circumstances surrounding this event. You were here, you heard the testimony, you heard the circumstances surrounding what happened and how it happened. I would ask that you consider that as a mitigator. 2D, the defendant requires specialized treatment for a mental disorder that is not related to substance abuse or addiction and is amenable to treatment. I think it's fair to say here that we know that Sarah suffers from some mental health issues, objective mental health issues that have been opined by Dr. Harper and Dr. Werner. And you heard Dr. Harper testify about the borderline post-traumatic stress disorder that she suffers from as it relates to this event, as it relates to her trauma that occurred in childhood. I think we heard from Dr. Werner. Dr. Werner testified that she suffered from the alcohol abuse disorder, as did Dr. Harper, but Dr. Werner also mentioned that she was not sure about the anxiety disorder, whether it occurred prior to or because she was in the jail for the 4.5 years. However, she does require specialized treatment for the mental disorder, and she is amenable for treatment. And then third, the defendant acted under extreme duress, I think based on Sarah Boone's mindset as she testified to her today, and then you heard from the experts at the trial that when you get that anxious about what happens. Sarah testified about they would have good days where there would be no drinking or very little drinking, and then there would be other days where there was heavy drinking. And generally, when George Torres got highly intoxicated is when potentially things could get violent, and that she was constantly anxious about each day that she was with him. She loved him. Obviously, being in a cycle like that where you love someone but can't leave them. For whatever reason, George Torres couldn't leave Sarah Boone, and Sarah Boone couldn't leave George Torres, and it was a vicious cycle. But we believe that she qualifies under that it was under extreme duress at the time of this event. And lastly, the defense was committed in an unsophisticated manner, which was an isolated incident. Now, isolated, we know, Judge, that she had one prior event in which both of them were arrested. You heard her testimony that it was during an event. They ended up downstairs next to the washer and dryer, and that she was on the bottom, and she had used her hands to try to get him off, and she had tried to choke him, and there were some marks on him. And she was arrested for I think felony domestic violence battery, as well as he was arrested. I think a few days later, both of those charges were dismissed against either party. But she has no criminal conviction record. She has never been convicted of a crime other than that event. Now, I think that can be distinguished. So we believe that it was an unsophisticated manner. Obviously, the uniqueness of this event is unsophisticated. Anybody that would calculate that they were going to murder somebody by putting them in a suitcase and let them spend the night, and the next morning, not try to dispose of the body, not try to put the suitcase in a car and go dump the body, not try to dispose of the bat, do something. She did nothing. No attempts to tamper with evidence. No attempts after the fact to uncover any conduct whatsoever. No attempts to delete the videos from her phone. Here's my phone, voluntarily given that information. I think that goes to the unsophisticated manner and unintentional death that occurred. I remember the first time I saw the Suitcase video. And I know people have differing opinions. Tony Henderson, my colleague, had a different opinion when he saw it. But I remember the first time I saw the video and I heard what she was saying to him. When he was saying, "Hey, Sarah, let me out. I can't breathe," or words to that effect. And the way that she was talking to him and the statements that she gave him, in my mind, what has he done to her? What has he done to her? Any loved one you see in a situation like that is going to run and let them out. So my thought was, obviously, they were both drinking. But what has he done to her? And I think it's telling about what she'd endured. So it's not a clear-cut case, Judge. It's not black and white. There is some gray. And it's up to you to decide what's appropriate based on the courts, based on the jury's decision. But I would ask you to temper whatever justice that you think is appropriate with some mercy, and consider the fact that the state was willing to offer 15 years on a manslaughter as a lesser included offense based on the facts and circumstances that they were aware of prior to this trial. Thank you.
Thank you. Any rebuttal by the state?
No.
Okay. The court has had the opportunity to review the evidence and testimony that was presented at trial. The victim impact statements presented here today, the statements of character witnesses, both orally and in writing, Dr. Harper's report and testimony, the defendant's testimony, pre-sentencing investigation, the arguments of the state and the arguments of the defense. Court pronounces sentence as follows. Ms. Boone, court sentences you to life in the Department of Corrections with credit time served that Madam Clerk will provide to you momentarily. There are also court costs and costs of prosecution, which Madam Clerk will give you the totals of momentarily. Due to the court levying a life sentence, the court is inclined to liquidate those to a civil judgment unless I hear opposition from the state.
No opposition, Your Honor.
All right. Madam Clerk, if you could please give us the credit time served and the court costs, please.
4 years, 9 months, and 8 days, and the court costs are $418, a state prosecution fee of $100, a dirt fee of $50, and a PD. Oh, excuse me, you're not screwed.
I'm right.
So the total would be to 608. $680.
All right, ma'am, the court costs and costs of prosecution are $618. Those will be liquidated to a civil judgment. You will be given credit time served of 4 years, 9 months, and 8 days. You will have 30 days from today to appeal the judgment and sentence in writing. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided to you. I'm going to have the courtroom deputy provide you the paperwork. Because you've been incarcerated for the last 58 some odd months, the court is going to declare that you are indigent in this matter. I cannot appoint the public defender to represent you as they are conflicted out. Similarly, I cannot appoint the regional conflict counsel to represent you for the same reasons. The clerk will appoint an attorney from the conflict wheel who specializes in appellate litigation. And again, you'll have 30 days from today to appeal that judgment and sentence in writing. Do you have any questions for me? You will now be remanded into the custody of the Orange County Jail to transfer you to the Department of Corrections, and I wish you the best of luck. State, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Defense, anything further? All right. Thank you all very much. Court's off the record.
So the earlier question about whether the judge pretty much had decided before he took the bench, he now can answer that he likely did. Had decided already. I thought the first statement on the stand may have been the most remarkable statement by a defendant at sentencing that I have ever heard. And I've seen a lot of them and heard a lot of them, and this one stands apart. In the context of saying she essentially forgives, and that not that she took responsibility, but forget what her words were. She excoriated every possible person or entity that she could, starting with George. She went to the family and blamed the family. She blamed law enforcement. She blamed social media. But I had a list and I had to stop writing because I couldn't keep up with her list of all the entities she blamed for why she was here. I believe that the fact that the defense lawyer said, you know, this is sentencing, so she's entitled to do a narrative she wants, was him distancing from that statement that she gave. That's only my guess. But boy, if I were, it could not have been the statement he would have advised her to give. I cannot imagine he would have advised her to give that statement. I had a list of part of it was really, I thought, pretty clever, because she listed all the things that she said George had done to her, some of which had a basis either in the evidence at trial or the three domestic violence complaints that had been made, arrested, that had been made, that were dismissed. But then she wove in a host of other things that were not testified to at trial. They all could have been true potentially, but there's no way to know whether they were true or not. And the list went on forever. The fact that she went after his family as being responsible for this, in part because they raised him to be an abuser, which is essentially what she said, after the statements by the family, is so blind to the environment and blind to the reactions of people as to be, I don't even have words for it. So as I said, it's amazing to me that, I mean, I had some of her quotes because I was just so struck by it. I mean, she started out with that, it was the literary, about the broken painting, and you come up with a better painting. It wasn't a painting, whatever it was afterwards.
A mosaic.
Mosaic, yeah, but she had one. Let me see if I can find it, because I thought it was just remarkable.
And while you're looking for that, Joe, I do just want to fill everyone in case you are just joining us and you missed the news. She was sentenced to life. She does have some credit time that she has already served, and that's 4 years, 9 months, and 8 days. She has 30 days to appeal the judgment, and the court costs for the prosecution and for the court costs totals, I think, $618. So that is the very latest. She was sentenced to life. She is there right now. I guess they're still filling out some paperwork there. But everyone had really the same sentiment as we were watching that.
Unbelievable. Here's some of it. She said, withholding forgiveness denies your brilliance. So she's not going to withhold forgiveness because that would take away from her brilliance. But then she went through that litany of all the things she was forgiving, which was just excoriating everybody else. It was, if somebody had done that as a piece of literature, you would have said, gee, this is really clever how this writer turns the comment upside down. But in the context of a sentencing hearing where she's trying to persuade the judge that she's remorseful, that she's learned from the experience, it's unbelievable. She said she forgave George for putting an M for murder scarlet letter on her. So the murder that she was convicted of is her victim's fault. And now, because she's magnanimous, she's going to forgive her victim for branding her as a murderer for the crime that she committed. That is a brain that I don't understand.
Well, and Joe, I think that was the part that took all of us by shock was, we now know what Sarah Boone is like. She obviously likes the attention, but to hear her go on and on, at first with a very angry tone, and then, there was some sarcasm, there was some mixed feelings, there was a lot of anger and resentment, but then at the end to come back and say that she forgives everyone and that she's the better person and the role model for forgiving everyone and calling people out one by one. I mean, it was just, again, to have the audacity to do all of that in one statement while she's speaking to the family members of
Amazing.
George Torres.
Yep. And I don't want to forget the expert witness either, because I thought, and I should say, and I've said before, I don't have a psychology degree. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a forensic expert. I'm not a psychologist. I think I may have had one psych class in college. I'm not even sure about that. But her list of what the traumas were in Sarah's past that damaged her so much. And I don't want to denigrate from the idea that she's clearly troubled. However it happened, I don't think anybody can disagree. But the list was that her brother was born 11 months after she was born, and he got his mother's attention and she didn't. That was number one as one of the factors that led to what she became. And she bonded with her father, and her father was not a warm person. And then she's in the hospital when they're trying to resuscitate him when he dies. And that's the third. Now, maybe people in the chat heard the experts say other things that moved into it, but those were the three that I heard. And those, I'm not going to say that those aren't, your mother bonds with your brother more than you. It happens in families. Your father died when you were a teenager, a terrible thing. But to list those as the triggers, and then not having seen her for 4.5 years while she's incarcerated to find out what the treatment is doing to help her, to relitigate part of what happened at trial, which was, she's clearly suffering from the syndrome, granted. But the jury said, assuming that, either the jury didn't believe her, or the jury said, assuming that it doesn't explain the killing. It's not a good place to go to try to relitigate what the jury decided, particularly a jury that came back in 90 minutes with a verdict on this.
It was a very fast verdict. But Joe, talk to us a little bit about the process, because while you had mentioned before the sentencing began that they could bring in witnesses, they could rediscuss a couple of topics, many of us in chat were confused because it seemed like they were really almost retrying some of the information. So explain that process to us.
Yeah, well, usually at the sentence, that typically does not happen at a sentencing hearing, and you usually don't see, or you often don't see witnesses testifying. One of them, was under oath. A couple of them were not. You normally don't see them being asked questions by the defense. They can. It often looks like what you saw from the state side. The witnesses get up and say the impact, and then you hear the character witnesses on the other side. So it was a little unusual, not terribly unusual, but a little unusual. You're not supposed to be relitigating the trial. I don't know that there would be any rule that would stop you, because the state typically is not going to object, because they've got the conviction. They know the judge has seen the trial. They know that the relitigating is not helpful, and it may be affirmatively harmful to second guess what the jury did. And that's effectively what you're doing. The jury heard all of this. So they're not going to object to it. So it goes. But typically you don't have them do it. Now, I understand what the expert was trying to do was to say she had this syndrome. And then you heard her lawyer at the end saying she was under extreme duress. Now, that again is moving towards an undercutting the jury's verdict, because the jury clearly didn't think she was under extreme duress. Otherwise, they would have come back probably with manslaughter, saying that the syndrome made her unable to evaluate the circumstances, and therefore she thought that she was acting in self-defense. They rejected it. So to go after it in sentencing it's not usually done, because it's not a good idea, because what you're asking the judge to do is to ignore what the jury did. And particularly in this case, with the judge having lived with her for the amount of time he lived with her letters and everything. Just amazing. I mean, I love the fact that she said she had so much else to say and she edited it down. Because she wasn't going to do, she had a word for it, she had a phrase for it. I mean, it went forever. It was striking to me how not helpful to her statement was.
And speaking of not helpful, what about those witnesses that then testified on her behalf, whom really, they didn't even know her on a very deep level. They only know her from prison, so they obviously know her after all of this. They can't really speak to her character before any of this, while she wasn't sober, while she wasn't in prison. So how helpful or not helpful was any of that? And what about the number of people? I mean, that was a lot of people that showed up.
Well, I don't know how many. 4 of them spoke. In the letters, at least one, and maybe more than one, was a repeat of one of the people who actually spoke. I thought there was more than one. I know there was at least one, and it was the woman who's got the kidney failure. She also sent a letter. I think one of the others also may have. So so you're doubling up. You're double counting in a sense. She doesn't have anybody else. She had her brother, because her brother submitted a written statement, as I heard the list. But what it is telling that she has nobody from her life before that was willing to come forward and talk about her, to talk about, maybe the abuse that she suffered, to give her.
Sorry, Space Ghost, if you can pull us, Space Ghost, can you hear us? Can you pull the volume? Space Ghost? Let me see if I can pull this up.
But also the state's expert saying that she suffered from intimate partner violence. I think that is at least a minimum, a mitigator in something like this. I understand the jury's decision. We respect the jury's decision. But the testimony, the photographs, the evidence was clear that she was abused. And no, I'm not happy with a life sentence.
Sarah Boone didn't have much of a reaction as far as what we could see inside the courtroom after learning she had a life sentence. How did you talk to her after? How is she feeling?
Well, she did say something to me to the effect that, "Can you believe it? I got life." And I said, no. So, I think she was poker faced. I think maybe that's what you're referring to, but I think she was not expecting life. Neither was I.
Mr. Owens, Jules with Top Mark Media. Can you tell me, did you prepare her for what might happen today? Was she prepared for this?
Yes, she was. we talked about the minimums, we talked about the maximums. She was aware. Court had told her what the minimums and maximum were before trial, so she knew what they were. She understood the judge had the power to downward depart and give lesser than the low end of the guidelines. He did not do that. So, that was his decision. He's the judge. He's the trial judge. He ultimately had to make the call. The jury made their call. It was the judge's time to pass sentence, and that's what he gave. I respect Judge Kranick. I like him a lot. I disagree with that sentence.
Can you talk about the next steps for Sarah?
Well, she's got 30 days to file an appeal. Usually, these appeals are handled by the public defender's office, who has maybe 3 or 4 lawyers within the office, and that's all they do is appeals. But in this case, Judge Kranick has said, I've already found that there's a conflict with the public defender's office. I've already found that there's a conflict with the alternative public defender's office called Regional Conflict Counsel. So there must be a list of appellate lawyers that do appellate criminal work in the private bar. And the clerk will pick whoever is next on the list will be her lawyer.
And again, you won't be representing her any longer.
No, never say never. If the case gets reversed on appeal and she's entitled to another trial, I'm not going to say I'll never represent her a second time, but I'm definitely not doing the appeal. And we'll see. I do believe there are 3 or 4 good appellate issues. We'll see what the appellate courts say. That usually takes, I think, about 1.5 to 2 years for them to come back. So she'll be with the Department of Corrections, wherever they send her, for the next couple of years.
And I apologize for this, but my camera glitched as you were starting. Your reaction to the verdict?
Well, disappointed with that. I thought because she did suffer from battered spouse syndrome, and that was elicited from the state's expert as well as the defense expert, as well as the testimony from Sarah Boone, as well as the photographs and the evidence, the arrest of Mr. Torres prior, that she was the victim of battered spouse. I thought the court should consider that. It was within his discretion to give her life. I strongly disagree with that result.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Owens.
If you believe that Sarah was more apologetic in her statements today, the judge may have given her a lighter sentence.
No.
Sarah seemed
No.
very upbeat when she walked in. Was that truly how she felt, or was that like a stiff upper lip kind of thing?
Sarah, you can imagine somebody being in jail for 4.5 years. Their self-esteem, they're at the bottom. Okay. And she's a fighter, as we all know. When she's backed into a corner, it's just her personality that comes out. She doesn't give up. She doesn't just say whatever. And it was her chance to say what she really believed based on her experience. And like I said, nobody knows what goes on behind those doors. We saw videotapes of her berating Mr. Torres, and it appeared, the state argued in the case in chief that it was a mutual abusive relationship. We can only go with what we know and what's presented as evidence. Nobody knows the details and the extent of what went on. We heard Sarah try to explain it. I believe she was trying to explain it. Did she harm herself maybe by some of the things she said as it relates to Mr. Torres or his family? Maybe.
I was just going to ask you about that. Did you have an opportunity to go over Sarah's statement that she was going to make in court today, or she did this completely on her own?
Well, she had written that statement several days ago, but I was not able to get back down here. The holidays and some other things that went on until last night. So I had a chance to talk to her about that statement earlier, right before court. I'm torn between being a lawyer and being a human being. She's facing life in prison. It's your chance to speak. I don't like to take away everything, but I did have her delete a bunch.
She did say it was edited.
It was.
Okay.
At my suggestion, but to some degree, she truly believes that she's a victim. And, to this country, I'm sure there have been other victims of domestic violence that have been battered women that have gone to prison. There have been a few cases where they've been acquitted based on the testimony, but it's a case-by-case basis. It is a difficult syndrome to explain. It's a difficult syndrome to understand because most women leave. The first time some guy pushes, strikes, hits, whatever the case may be, they won't stand for it. But there is a small percentage of women that put up with the abuse.
What's next for you now, Mr. Owens?
I'm going home.
So am I.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Scott, is there any last questions you have? Do you have any questions for him?
All right, we just muted that. A big thanks to Trial TV Live. They are the camera that we're watching right now. It's a live feed. They're there in Orlando, and they were getting the entire live feed today, and then also this interview afterwards. So a big shout out to Trial TV Live. You guys should check them out here on YouTube. And I think they have a lot of different trials that they go to and cover, especially helpful when there's not a pool camera. So big shout out to Trial TV Live. Thank you so much. I know that Joel met them in real life, and Joel said that they were very gracious and very kind. So we appreciate you guys teaming up with us today to bring everyone this coverage. I'm going to pull up our audio.
Relationships, we've all seen it. We've had family or friends, maybe not this dysfunctional, but relationships where it's not working out, but they can't seem to let go.
The statement she made in the court, his family, he was no longer alive. Some of them share, she would say that she forgave them, but not stopping the abuse. Is that something that you advised her on in that statement?
Well, that's something that she came up with and she wanted to say. And again, she's facing life in prison. I believe she was a victim of domestic violence based on everything that I've looked at in this case. So I know that she was a victim. Now, whether she was justified in somehow this happening, of course not. But
I mean, didn't that strike you as,
All right, I'm going to cut the audio just because now I think he's repeating himself and saying the same thing over and over again. And Joe, I'd rather hear from you. So
yeah, he did his best. Although that last comment, I think he's going to regret saying, was she justified in doing it? No, or of course not, because that goes to the self-defense defense. Granted, you're a victim of domestic abuse and you suffer from the syndrome. The question then is, did you act, given your ability to assess what went on, did you believe you were in imminent fear of violence? And he just said she wasn't justified, which cuts into the defense that he made at trial. The factors that are used to down what Florida has, a lot of states have this, is they've got and you hear them talk about the score sheet. They've got a sheet that gives what the general sentence would be for a particular crime. This one was second-degree murder. And then you do a scoring of the circumstances of the offense, and then any factors in mitigation or any factors that would aggravate. And the ones that he used were, she couldn't evaluate the criminality of what happened. That one's a non-starter. She knew right from wrong. She knew it was a crime. That one, it seemed to me, was just a non-starter. The second one was, she suffers from an underlying mental condition, not addiction or substance abuse, that warrants special treatment, and she's amenable to treatment. Now, that may be true, but that doesn't say that you can't get the treatment in prison, that you have to have a lighter sentence to get the treatment. The third one that he went to was she was acting under extreme duress. And I said before, that one to me, again, seemed to be a non-starter because of the jury verdict, because that's the exact issue that they were looking at. Did she have reason to feel that she was unfair and had to act immediately? And then he had a fourth one. Let's see. She had a poor something. I wrote it in such small print, I can't even read my own oh, was there a power differential? Now that's where he's getting to the abuse that he said she suffered. But there was evidence in the record that it was mutual. And he can say rightly that no one knows what's happening behind closed doors, but you had her videos where she was taunting George, where she was demeaning George. That certainly was evidence that could be used to say it was a mutually bad relationship there, and that the power differential wasn't there. I mean, when I watched, I assume a lot of the people on the chat watched those videos at the trial. When I watched them, I kept, you have a dominatrix in the room, you know. And I think I said on one of your shows that I could imagine her saying to him, now you get in that suitcase, and him complying because he was the submissive in the relationship. So the power differential didn't seem to me to be a very strong factor of mitigation, but you have to go with what you have. And those were the factors he had to use to try to argue to the judge that she deserves some downgrade from the sentence.
And, you know, going back to the family statement, I just want to bring this up because this was very powerful. So when the family was speaking, I mean, the mother was obviously very heartbroken, as we can imagine, but she gave a very emotional and raw statement. Then we heard from 2 other family members. And then we heard from Sarah. And when Sarah came on, she just started by attacking, and SP 74 here saying she just accused and blamed the Torres family. And I just want to take a minute. I just put up George Torres's photo here to remember that we are talking about a human being, regardless of how their relationship was and what did or didn't happen. What we do know is that this man here on camera is now dead. He was a father, he was a son, and you could see how heartbroken the family was. And, you know, when Sarah was giving her statement, she kept saying forever, 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 talking about how all of this is impacting her. But let's not forget that he is also forever gone. None of this his choice. And his family is forever impacted as well. So I did want to just take a minute to remember George Torres, who's here on camera, and then also his family members, who obviously are going to have a long road ahead of them for dealing with all of this. And I don't even know if healing is even a possibility. People say, you know, they heal and you know, it takes a long time, but I know many people say that you never really heal from something this deep and this hurtful. So I did want to take some time to say that. I also want to remind everyone that we do have a show coming up at 5 p.m. Joel actually just walked in. So
that was the noise we heard.
Yeah, I apologize. I was a little distracted. I told Joel to switch chairs so I can go pick up our kids, but he says he has to race to the studio and get ready for the next show. Joe, I'm going to let you say one more closing statement, and then I have to race out because my kids get out of school in 9 minutes.
Okay, well, I can do it really quickly. I'll repeat where I started. It was the most remarkable statement by a defendant at a sentencing hearing I have ever heard, and it was the most remarkable articulation of you know, forgiveness in the context of blaming everybody. I that's where I'm going to end because I was just flabbergasted.
Yeah, no, likewise. And again, if any of you guys missed it, then please do go back and rewatch. As hard as it is, go back and rewatch the statement from the mother. I mean, you can really feel and hear her pain. And again, you know, we talk about these cases all the time. We talk about all of these horrific cases with these awful crimes that are sometimes just really unimaginable. But we are talking about real people, real families, sons, fathers, siblings.
Yeah, and so obtuse by her to go after that poor mother. I mean, it's as though she didn't hear their statements at all. It's as though she came in first and didn't have a chance to modify what she was going to say. Whatever you think, this mother has suffered a really terrific loss. She's lost a son, never going to see him again. And she talked about how searing that was. And so you start out saying, it's your fault because you raised him to be an abuser, which is essentially what she said. It's just unbelievable. My heart goes out to that family, and I hope they got some, at least small, feeling of good feeling from the verdict. The verdict and the sentence is never ever going to substitute, but at least it's something.
Yeah, we're wishing them some peace eventually. It may be a long road before they even feel that, but obviously our hearts are with them, and we're sending them some kind of peace if they can even feel that. I also just want to remind everyone we do have that show coming up at 5 p.m. on Joel.
Hannah Kobayashi, we've got
On Hannah Kobayashi.
we have a former
Oh, there-
LAPD detective
With a former LAPD detective
and a former police chief.
and a former police chief. So we're gonna bring you guys all of that. That's at 5 o'clock. All right, I think we are done here. I'm just looking for the end button. All right, thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate you being here with me for several hours, and thank you so much to everyone here at STS Nation. Please remember to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. And again, we will see you at 5 p.m. live in about 30 minutes with the host, Joel Waldman. Thanks so much, everyone.